We got all the background, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think it's time to start talking about what happened to your parents. Like the truthful version.
Okay.
Okay? So we have like 20 pages of writing. We're going to start with a clean white piece of paper for you to start telling the truth.
Okay. What?
Because listen to me. This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth.
Okay.
Okay?
What?
Listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us. Okay? And we know the reason why. Okay? You need to tell the truth. Listen. You need to tell the truth about what happened and just tell us why it happened. Okay? If something happened, if you were defending yourself, or if you just got fed up with stuff, you need to tell us the truth. Okay? This is your chance to tell us why. Okay? I'm not BSing you. Okay? So can we do that?
Okay. They're okay. Lawyer. I'm sorry. Say it again, Jay. Lawyer. Okay. Because they're...
You want a lawyer?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just write down the time there. It's about 6:41.
You're under arrest. Okay?
You've just watched Chandler Halderson getting shut down, blindsided in a way he never saw coming. To him, this was just a routine conversation about his missing parents. But what he didn't know was that detectives had already made a discovery. Just half an hour before this interview, they'd found human remains they believed belonged to his father. Before any of this, Chandler just came across as a geeky, harmless kid. The last person anyone expected to be living a life built on lies. He told people he had a good job, money coming in, a degree on the way. Even a role with the police search and rescue dive team. None of it was real. His entire identity was a story he'd repeated so often, he'd started to believe it himself. He'd even claimed he'd been hired by Elon Musk to build rockets that would eventually leave the planet. A bold dream for someone who barely left his bedroom. What followed was genuinely bizarre, even by true crime standards. Chandler didn't step back. Instead, he doubled down. He gave interviews as the worried son, manipulated his girlfriend from jail, insisted he was innocent, and walked into court clinging to the fantasy while the prosecution tore it apart. Hi, I'm David, and this is No Contest. Today, we're breaking down one of the most twisted modern-day tragedies you'll ever hear. And the only way to understand it is to follow the chain of events exactly as it unfolded. We'll start with the lies, the fantasy world Chandler built long before the violence. We'll move through the day, everything snapped. Then a day-by-day breakdown of the week he pretended to search for the parents he already knew were gone. After that, the interrogation. Chandler in one room, his girlfriend quietly dismantling him in another. Then a deep dive into the trial itself. And finally, his last desperate move, an appeal that went nowhere because there was nothing left to hide behind. This is the complete story. Every fact, every lie, laid bare. So before anything went wrong, before the lies, the investigation, or the headlines, there was a family who genuinely did everything right. Bart and Krista Halderson built the kind of home people point to when they talk about how things should be. Stable, loving, and intentional. I mean, they raised their two boys in Wisconsin, moving from the forest to Plymouth and eventually settling back in Windsor, a quiet rural neighborhood where every house sat on its own patch of land. So Bart was the structure of the household. I mean, an accountant who lived the way he advised others to, responsibly, sensibly, and always thinking ahead. I mean, he taught them how to fix things, how to manage money, and how to be independent. Everyone who knew him said the same thing. He was solid, reliable, and genuinely good. So Krista was the heart. If Bart provided the structure, then she provided the warmth. I mean, she was the emotional center of the family, the person everyone went to for reassurance, advice, or comfort. So Bart and Krista weren't flashy and they didn't chase attention. I mean, their social life was built on long-term friendships, neighbors they genuinely cared about, and the simple joy of being at home. I mean, they were the kind of people who made a community feel like a community. Among those people were Jane and Michael Hilgendorf, friends who became family. So Jane and Krista had been best friends since school, and the bond had never faded. Even when they lived hours apart. I mean, they made the drive to see each other. Effort wasn't optional, it was part of who they were. So the kids basically grew up together, like cousins. Hannah and Haley called Bart and Krista aunt and uncle, and the Halderson boys did the same with Jane and Mike. So two households, one family. Haley said it best in court. They became our family and we became theirs. So Mitchell, the older brother, was everything Bart and Krista had hoped their sons would become. Smart, grounded, and brilliant with computers. I mean, he built a career in tech, bought his own home, got engaged, and visited his parents almost weekly. I mean, he was the blueprint, the proof that Bart and Krista's parenting worked exactly the way it was supposed to. And then there were the dogs, Izzy and Rizzo, part of the family, part of the routine, part of the love inside that home. I mean, whatever else can be said about Chandler later in this story, he loved those dogs. They all did. So Mitchell and Chandler were only 18 months apart. And on the surface, they looked like two brothers cut from the same cloth. But that's where the similarities ended. Bart and Krista gave both boys the same upbringing, the same love, the same structure, the same opportunities. Mitchell took that foundation and ran with it. Chandler didn't. To understand Chandler, you have to accept that there were two versions of him. There was the Chandler everyone thought they knew, polite, quiet, slightly awkward, with a sweet girlfriend, a decent group of friends, and a place at Madison Area Technical College studying IT. And then there was the other Chandler, the one Bart and Krista dealt with behind closed doors. The Chandler who treated effort like it was a personal insult, and the Chandler who approached responsibility like it was optional. I mean, Chandler made it through his first year of college, moved out, lived with friends, and had that classic first year blowout. When the fun ended and the work began, he didn't rise to the challenge. He just avoided it entirely. And when he flunked out, he didn't come home and admit it. Instead, he did what Chandler always did when faced with consequences. He built a lie. He told Bart and Krista he was still enrolled, just doing the courses online now. It was the perfect cover story for someone who wanted to avoid work while looking productive. He could sit at his computer all day, gaming, scrolling, snapping, napping, and as long as he clicked the mouse when someone walked past, he could basically pretend he was studying. And because Bart and Krista trusted their son because they had no reason not to. They believed him. But this created a new problem. Chandler had been living away from home for a year now. And in his mind, that made him an adult. He wanted independence, respect, and freedom, but without any of the responsibilities that come with adulthood. Bart wasn't having that. If Chandler wanted to be treated like an adult, then he would need to act like one. That meant getting a job, contributing, paying his way. So the online student lie became his shield, the thing he hid behind to avoid responsibility, whilst still looking busy. And once that lie was in place, the rest of the fantasy started to build on top of it. This was the beginning of the House of Cards. So Chandler lived his life like a man who thought reality was optional, like the universe should politely adjust itself to whatever story he felt like telling that day. And the first big example was the whole I'm still a student at Madison College performance. So by the time the college removed him, the emails had stopped and his access was gone. But Chandler wasn't the type to let a small detail like not being enrolled get in the way of pretending he was thriving academically. So instead of having one uncomfortable conversation, he built an entire imaginary academic life from scratch. And this wasn't a tiny lie. This was full coursework, fake assignments, diagrams, spreadsheets, screenshots. I mean, the man basically created his own university. I mean, he put more effort into pretending to be educated than most people put into actually getting educated. I mean, if he'd have spent half that time doing real work, I mean, he would have got a degree by accident. And the best part, he showed Kat these elaborate projects. I mean, she saw a man who looked busy, focused, committed, when in reality, he was just sitting there inventing homework for a class he wasn't even in. I mean, he wasn't studying, he wasn't progressing. He was just terrified of being seen for who he really was. A man who had run out of real achievements and was now surviving entirely on vibes and Microsoft Word. So after Chandler finished building his imaginary university, he decides to expand the franchise and open an imaginary workplace too. Because why limit yourself to one fake life when you can just run two at the same time? And that's where the remote job at American Family Insurance storyline begins. So a storyline he committed to with the enthusiasm of someone who had never actually worked a day in his life, but felt spiritually connected to the idea of having a job. So every morning he woke up at 6 a.m. to prepare for work, which basically meant sitting at his computer like a man trying to look busy in case somebody walked past. So Bart, who actually did work for a living, started noticing the cracks. No paychecks, no HR emails, no tax forms, no evidence of anything except Chandler sitting at a desk like a man waiting for inspiration to strike. And instead of admitting it, instead of saying, yep, it was me, I made it up, Chandler doubled down. I mean, that was his signature move. When a lie started wobbling, he didn't stop lying. He just added more lies to stabilize the first lie. So then, out of the blue, Bart asked for something Chandler couldn't fake, a transcript. So something official, something real, something that couldn't be covered with a shrug, a smile, or a last-minute technical issue. So this is when the lies start leveling up. At first, Chandler created one fictional college employee, Daniel Spieth. So the helpful admin guy who would send the transcript any day now. And Daniel's excuses just weren't cutting it. So Chandler invented a second employee, Alyssa Brandt. So Alyssa's entire job was to reassure Bart that Daniel wasn't useless and that everything was totally fine. So she was the second point of contact, the person you CC when the first person is messing around. But Bart kept pushing. So Chandler created a third employee, Aaron Hoover. And at this point, he wasn't even trying. He literally looked around the room, saw a Hoover vacuum, and just thought, yeah, that'll do. From there, the whole thing turned into a one-man theatre production. He emailed himself, pretending to be all three of them. He didn't just lie. He built an entire customer service department in his head. When Bart asked to be CC'd, Chandler had to email himself from multiple accounts. When Bart requested a Zoom meeting, Chandler cancelled it with a dramatic COVID exposure excuse. And then came the pièce de résistance, the burner phone, because nothing says I'm telling the truth like buying a second phone so you can pretend to be a man who doesn't even exist. Bart called Daniel, Chandler answered, and Bart, who had known his son's voice since the day he was born, hung up and mentioned to Krista that Daniel sounds a lot like Chandler. At this point, the lies weren't just collapsing. They were collapsing on top of each other. So with Bart pushing harder and the email circus falling apart, Chandler needed something huge. Something so big, it would yank everyone's attention away from the transcript disaster. And in true Chandler fashion, he didn't think small. He didn't think realistic. He didn't even think earthbound. He decided his next move was SpaceX, Elon Musk's rocket company. Chandler looked at the collapsing transcript situation and thought, you know what will fix this? Becoming an astronaut. So to work at SpaceX, even sweeping the floors, you need a degree in engineering, physics, computer science, or something equally terrifying, a CV that looks like you built a robot in your sleep, a portfolio of actual projects, multiple interviews, technical exams, and proof that you can function as an adult. To become an engineer, you need a bachelor's degree, usually a master's, often a PhD, years of experience, the ability to do maths that would make most normal people cry, and the emotional stability to not lie about college transcripts. So to become an astronaut, you need a STEM degree, thousands of hours of flight time, military or aerospace experience, and 0 burner phones. Meanwhile, Chandler had no degree, no job, no experience, no transcript, no qualifications, and no intention of doing any work. What he did have, however, was a Hoover vacuum he used to name fake employees. And yet he told Kat with full confidence that he was joining SpaceX. He'd also put a deposit on a flat in Florida. She would be moving in with him in time, but until then, he would fly home every weekend. He was basically about to become a jet-setting aerospace engineer. This wasn't just a lie. Chandler built an entire future in his head, where he was designing rockets, saving humanity, and commuting between Wisconsin and Florida like he was in the Avengers. Meanwhile, in the real world, Bart was still trying to get the transcript. So June was the month where Chandler's entire fantasy life started colliding with the real world. While Chandler was working from home, which in his case meant sitting at his computer pretending to be employed, he spent most of his time playing online shooter games with people in different time zones. That's how he ended up talking to Andrew Smith, a US Army soldier stationed in Germany. So when Andrew came back to the US in June, he met up with Chandler and gave him a perfectly legal gift, a high-powered assault rifle and a box of ammo. So to Andrew, this was just a friendly gesture. So to Chandler, this was like being handed a side quest in a video game he'd been failing since level 1. Because here's the truth. Chandler should not have been trusted with anything that required responsibility. I mean, not even a houseplant. While Chandler was adding new characters to his imaginary universe, real life was happening around him. Mitchell went in for routine blood work and came out with a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. So Krista was already fighting her own battle with cancer when Mitchell was rushed into hospital. And even though she was terrified, she did what mothers do. She held herself together in front of her son. She reassured him. She made everything sound manageable, even when she didn't believe it herself. Bart was also constantly by Mitchell's side. So the family rallied around the child who genuinely needed them. And Chandler, he was annoyed nobody was paying attention to his fictional job at SpaceX. Meanwhile, Chandler still had that box of ammo Andrew gave him. And what he chose to do with it was peak Chandler logic. I mean, he took one of the bullets, wrote "Get well soon" on it, and then sent it to Mitchell. The most confusing, socially illiterate gesture in the history of recovery wishes. I mean, with the SpaceX lie now closing in and the family's attention firmly on Mitchell, Chandler needed a new story. Something dramatic enough to drag the spotlight back onto him. Something big enough to explain why he couldn't start his latest imaginary job. So he staged a fall down the stairs. He didn't just fall though. He made a bang so loud it sounded like someone had launched a washing machine down the staircase. Then he positioned himself at the bottom, and to really sell it, he added these dramatic little groans. And honestly, what was the plan if Bart didn't hear it? Would he have stayed there all night? Would he have slept on the stairs like a collapsed deck chair? I mean, this man was fully prepared to die on that staircase before admitting he'd lied about SpaceX. Doctors said it was a mild concussion at most, but a mild concussion didn't compete with a real emergency, and it didn't get him out of starting at SpaceX. So he upgraded it. He started with the basics, the stuff he made up himself. He couldn't feel his legs. Bright lights hurt his eyes. He was blacking out, and he was getting headaches. But then he clearly cracked open the medical dictionary and went wild. I mean, suddenly Chandler wasn't just concussed. He had an entire season's worth of diagnoses. Nerve and spinal damage, paralysis now on the table, a brain bleed, a rapidly forming hematoma, a brain aneurysm, and he would need his head drilled open. And once he'd upgraded himself medically, he moved on to the life impact consequences. He couldn't live alone. He couldn't drive. He would need a colostomy bag later down the line. And then came the grand finale, the one that conventionally solved all his problems. He couldn't fly in a plane. So SpaceX was officially out. He wore a neck brace he didn't need everywhere, even to Father's Day dinner, sitting there like a discount action figure whose head only turns one way. I mean, this wasn't just attention seeking, it was strategy. The fool was his alibi, his excuse for why he couldn't start the SpaceX job he already claimed he'd got. So by June 30th, Bart had reached the point where he just couldn't wait anymore. So Bart called the college himself. He pretended to be Chandler, got through to a real employee named Omar Job, and within minutes, the entire house of cards collapsed. Omar told him everything. Not only that, but Chandler owed the college $2,000. I mean, every excuse, every email, every delay, every story, all lies.
Hi. I'm trying to get an appointment scheduled to meet with somebody to mainly just get a copy of a transcript and also a printed copy of a certificate that was earned and other degree verification. I'd tried to work with Daniel Spike to see if he can get through the information. I don't know if he's with you guys anymore, but it just seems like the ball keeps getting dropped.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty easy to request a transcript. Hold on, let me look at your account first, okay? Okay, what's your first name?
Chandler, Chandler. Last name is Hald as in David, Erson.
Okay, so it looks like you owe a balance. You owe a balance of $2,349. That's why you can't request it. Pay the balance, though. You have to pay the balance first. Then you can obtain whatever you want to obtain. I don't see that you earned a certificate. You were taking IT classes, right? I don't see that you were in a program.
There was a solar program, too.
No, I don't see a request for duplicate account. There was no.
How far back does that account go that you're looking at? Like when was the first class taken?
18, spring of 2018.
So that does have all the history then.
So I don't see that you were admitted in any program.
You said they were, it's the IT degrees in there, right?
No, those are just classes. You might have just took the classes but not be in the program. You took a solar class. Yep, you took solar classes, but you were not in the program.
Do you have an Alyssa Brandt that works in that area? Alyssa? Yeah, Alyssa?
No.
How about, does Daniel Spice still work there?
No, it's not so, no.
Okay, that should have done. Okay, thank you for your help.
Right, you're welcome.
Bart didn't shout. He didn't panic. He didn't explode. I mean, he just texted Chandler and said, I spoke to Omar Joe. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because up until that point, he'd managed to keep every line of communication running through himself. But now Bart had gone straight to the college, spoken to a real employee, and gotten real answers. And Chandler knew exactly what that meant. The house of cards wasn't wobbling anymore. It was collapsing loudly and right on top of him. And from that moment on, we don't have any verifiable information about what happened inside that house that night. But what we do know is that by the next morning, so July the 1st, Bart had added a note to his calendar for that very day, Madison College, 3 p.m. So the next piece of evidence comes at 1:04 p.m. on July the 1st, when Chandler texted Kat saying he thought his parents were going to the cabin tomorrow. So on the surface, it reads like a throwaway comment, but in context, lined up against everything else he'd been doing, it becomes painfully clear that this wasn't a question or confusion or him passing along information that he'd been told. This was Chandler quietly laying the first brick in the story he would later lean on. He wasn't guessing, he wasn't wondering, and he wasn't checking plans. He was rehearsing the lie before he needed it. By this point, it's obvious he'd already made his decision, and whatever he decided, it did not end well for his parents. So the final communication we have from Bart is a short, simple text sent at 2:10 p.m. on July the 1st. I'm ready whenever you are. That's it. Bart was doing what he always did, showing up, being supportive, giving Chandler every possible chance to tell the truth. And that message, that calm, gentle, ordinary message, was the last time anyone ever heard from him. Bart Halderson sent a simple text to his son and then disappeared from the world. So after Bart's final message, that calm, gentle, I'm ready whenever you are, the next thing we see from Chandler is panic dressed up as normal life. Because according to the evidence at trial, what happened immediately after that message was the moment everything changed. And once Chandler had crossed that line, he suddenly had a very real, very immediate problem. Krista was due home, so he texted her asking if she would stop on the way back and pick up some soda, because he supposedly has an extra hour at work. So on the surface, it sounds harmless, but in context, it's crystal clear what he was doing. Buying time, any delay, any buffer before she walked through that door. Krista, being the warm, kind, endlessly supportive mum she was, replied exactly how you'd expect. Okay, I can. Smiley face. That tiny smiley face hits like a punch. It's pure Krista. Soft, helpful, trusting, doing what any mum would do for her son. And tragically, it's the last message she ever sent. So just after 5 p.m, Krista pulled into the driveway. Calm, normal, completely unaware that Chandler had already crossed a line that he could never come back from. So a neighbour's Nest camera caught her car pulling in, doing what she'd done 1,000 times before. And tragically, that's the last confirmed sighting of her. From that moment on, the outside world heard nothing. But inside that house, Chandler was already in the middle of a crisis entirely of his own making. He'd just done the unthinkable. And now Krista was walking straight into the aftermath. And here's the part that tells you everything you need to know about Chandler Halderson. Krista was never seen again, which means one thing. When faced with the chance to come clean about what he'd done to Bart, he didn't take it. He didn't break down. He didn't confess. He didn't even attempt honesty for the first time in his life. Rather than admit what he'd already done, he repeated the same unthinkable choice with his own mum. I mean, it's like he was allergic to the truth. So after everything that had already happened inside that house, Chandler sat down and wrote himself a to-do list. Not just any list though. He titled it Chores. A chores list. In the middle of all this. And on that list, written casually, like he was jotting down groceries, were items like get H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, a chemical commonly used to clean up blood, clean floor, get a job right next to hydrogen peroxide and cleaning tasks. It is unbelievable. It is chilling. And honestly, it tells you more about Chandler's mindset than any psychological report ever could. Because while any normal person would be in full meltdown mode, Chandler was treating the cleanup like chores, just ticking boxes I mean, that's the thing with him. Cold wasn't a mood. It was a default setting. So only after writing that little weekend errands from hell to-do list did Chandler finally snap into panic mode. So first thing he does, he ditches the neck brace. The same neck brace he'd been wearing everywhere like he was auditioning for a medical drama, and heads out to the local garage to buy bags of ice. Then he comes home and clears out the freezer like he's reorganizing leftovers. I mean, he gathers tools from around the house. He moves objects around like he's trying to force a solution into existence. I mean, investigators would later piece together that Chandler spent the night attempting to make the problem disappear. I mean, the fireplace showed signs of intense heat. A glass pane blew out from the force of the flames, injuring Chandler's toe. Even his cover-up injured him. I mean, the house smelled of smoke. Items were half burnt and nothing was working. So by the time the sun came up on July 2nd, Chandler had already spent most of the night trying and failing to erase the consequences of what he had done. So after hours of pacing, panicking, and realizing his first plan was a complete disaster, Chandler did what he always did. He abandoned it halfway through and moved on to the next one. So by early that morning, he was already out the door buying tarp from a DIY store, because in his mind, the only way out of this was to make the entire situation disappear. No accountability, no honesty, no problem. So he went home, loaded up the car, and set off across Wisconsin on what looked like a scenic tour. And then comes one of the strangest details of all. One of the places he drove to was a favorite family swimming spot. So somewhere they've gone for years, somewhere familiar, somewhere convenient. And that tells you everything about Chandler's current mindset. I mean, even in the middle of a crisis of his own making, he was still thinking in shortcuts. So by the time July 4th rolled around, Chandler had already spent 2 full days driving all over Wisconsin. And on top of that, he was now juggling yet another lie he'd created that very morning using Krista's phone. The same phone he'd been storing in the basement, wrapped in tin foil, stuffed inside a shoe, and hidden in a box. Overcomplicated, pointless, and based on the idea that tin foil somehow blocks consequences. Because yes, aluminium foil can block signals if you wrap it tightly enough, in multiple layers and with 0 gaps, basically turning it into a sealed metal box. But that's not what Chandler did. He wrapped Krista's phone in foil, shoved it in a shoe, and hid it in a box, which does absolutely nothing. So the police still see everything. It wasn't a shield. It wasn't clever. It was just kitchen foil. And because he couldn't help himself, he sent a text from Krista's phone to his own, pretending to be her. A neat little, "We arrived safely and we're heading to the parade" message. Something he thought would make the cabin story feel more real later on. But this was one of Chandler's major mistakes, because that year, July the 4th, fell on a Sunday, which meant everyone in Wisconsin celebrated on Saturday, the 3rd. So the celebrations had already happened the day before. So Chandler's "we're going to the parade today" message made no sense. And while everyone else in Wisconsin was celebrating, Chandler was already working on his next move. He went to visit his girlfriend Kat, her mum Dulce, and Dulce's girlfriend Cress, who lived on a beautiful farm. But Chandler didn't appreciate any of it. He saw only an opportunity. He still had parts he needed to get rid of, as well as tools, items from the house, and the gun Andrew Smith had given him. So he reignited the fake injury storyline, telling Cress he needed to use the pool for therapy. So Cress, being polite, said of course he could come whenever he needed and gave him her number. So she didn't expect him to show up the very next day. But Chandler did exactly that. So on July 5th, Chandler actually turned up at the farm again. They were surprised he'd come back so quickly, but they were accommodating all the same. But Chandler didn't go anywhere near the pool. Instead, he drove straight past it, continued down the property, and diverted into a wooded area. And once he was in the trees, he started hiding things. But there was a problem. Cress and Dulce noticed he wasn't at the pool. Instead, they saw him emerging from the trees, sweating, jittery, nervous, and absolutely not doing anything that resembled therapy. Just a man acting strange in the woods on a hot July afternoon. So he made his excuses and he left quickly. But the damage was already done. Cress walked away from that moment thinking his behaviour was weird. Really weird. Weird enough, it stuck with her. Weird enough that she mentioned it later. And weird enough that she became one of the key witnesses in the entire case. July 5th was the day Chandler accidentally put himself on somebody else's radar. And once that happened, the clock on his story started ticking. So by July 6th, Chandler genuinely believed he'd made it through the worst of it. In his mind, the evidence was gone. I mean, all he had left now was the performance. What he didn't realize was that the real pressure was only just beginning. Even though the police weren't officially involved yet, everybody else was. People who actually knew Bart and Krista were already starting to feel like something was wrong. Chandler was still juggling texts, excuses, and half-truths. But the circle around him was tightening, and he had no idea. So leading that tightening circle was Jane, who by now was sick of waiting. So on July 7th, she and her husband Mike drove up to the cabin themselves. But when Jane arrived, she saw the truth instantly. Nobody had been at the cabin. The entire story Chandler had been feeding people collapsed in one glance. So Jane called him, and she didn't ask him to report his parents missing. I mean, she told him, firm, direct. It should have happened days earlier. But Chandler had been stalling, improvising, and hoping the questions would fade. But Jane was not having it. And just like that, it was finally time to let the world know that Bart and Krista had been missing for 6 whole days. So on July 7th, Chandler walked into the police department and officially reported his parents missing. And the story he gave them was something. I mean, according to Chandler, Bart and Krista had apparently decided out of nowhere to go away for the July weekend with an unknown couple in an unknown car for an unknown reason. And they supposedly left Friday morning without telling a single soul. And the strangest part, he claimed they were heading to the family cabin. It sat on White Lake in Langlade County, about a 4-hour drive north of Windsor. So everyone knew the cabin. It was familiar, predictable, and loved. So the idea that Bart and Krista would suddenly leave with strangers in a mystery vehicle without telling anybody and head to the cabin the entire family had access to. I mean, it just didn't make sense. And Chandler didn't stop there. I mean, he said they took $4,000 in cash. I mean, Bart, the accountant who tracked every penny and hated carrying cash. And apparently, these two light drinkers took a whole load of hard liquor with them for this spontaneous weekend away. It was like Chandler didn't even know his own parents. I mean, the whole thing was weird, but that's the story he told. And once he said it out loud, the process began. So after a long day, Chandler was finally ready for a long sleep. And of course, Kat was still right by his side, completely unaware that she was sharing a bed with someone who had just done the unthinkable. I mean, Kat had no clue. Everything had happened in that same home she visited. And by the very next day, Chandler had tidied up. I mean, he'd even built that ridiculous fort-style bed that made it almost impossible for Kat to get out of without waking him. I mean, he'd thought of everything, because in his mind, if he fell asleep and Kat wandered off for a midnight snack, she might find something she absolutely was not supposed to find. So they went to bed, and he needed that sleep, because tomorrow was going to be a very busy day for Mr. Chandler Halderson. So July 8th rolls around, and Chandler is up at the crack of dawn, like he's got a full-time job in being suspicious. Before most people have even had their first sip of coffee, he's out knocking on neighbours' doors like some deranged paperboy.
Hey, I'll meet you in the garage, okay?
Okay.
I don't know if we've ever met when you first moved over there. I think we met. Sorry about what's going on.
What it is, but I was wondering if your door camera
You
picks
do
up
have
the
a ring,
road.
yeah.
Does it pick up the road?
Yes, some it does.
Would you have any notifications from Friday morning, early, before 6:15?
We can check. That's not a problem. Is that before
That'd be great.
6:15?
Yeah, before 6:15, kind of since Thursday midnight.
Okay.
Any notifications would
Okay.
be helpful.
My wife is the one that knows how to run that, so I'll have her pull it up on the computer. So Thursday night to Friday morning. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank
I'll
you.
drop you a text once my wife looks at the ring. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
He wants to know how much of his busy little week got caught on camera.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to track them down, so I was hoping anyone would have like security cameras and stuff like that.
We do for you guys, okay?
Thank you.
Take care of things.
Take care.
Bye.
And he also wanted to know whether any CCTV could actually see the front of the house clearly enough to show people coming or going. His parents, or the imaginary couple he claimed they left with on Friday. So he was hoping the cameras wouldn't have that angle. Meanwhile, the police had already collected the CCTV hours earlier.
Hi, my name is Chandler Halderson. I live just down the road.
Oh, yes.
You're the one with all of the police.
Yeah.
I was told you had the fancy security system. I was wondering if you were able to capture the road or my house.
The police actually came and downloaded everything they have. But it's actually my sister's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were here, I think till like 9 o'clock last night and downloaded all the video she's got. So we're hoping that...
Yeah, did it capture anything on...
We don't know. We don't know. They just took a copy of everything and So we're hoping.
Wide angle lens.
Yeah, and it's all
Be able to get a
yeah, and it's all HD. And then I think there's one.
Especially in the dark, it looks like it has a little bit of night vision.
Yeah, and there's one on the corner of the garage too. I don't know if that one quite goes that direction, but
Maybe see this road and take it from over here.
yeah. So hopefully, I mean, we gave them everything that we had, so we're hoping they find something on there. I don't know if there's anything we can do.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
So Chandler is sprinting around the neighborhood, trying to control a narrative that's already out of his hands. Now let's talk about the timing. I mean, he's knocking on doors between 8 and 9 a.m. I mean, who does that? Who wakes up an entire street at breakfast time with, "Hi, do you have any surveillance footage?" I mean, if someone knocked on my door that early, they'd be meeting the dogs. And once he'd finished waking up the neighborhoods, he moves on to his next brilliant idea: media interviews.
They were picked up by their friends, who I never got the name of, and I assumed it was someone I was aware of, the close neighbors of theirs up the street, or their best friends down on the east side. So that's what I assumed. I never really asked any further.
So this guy has spent a week running around Wisconsin getting rid of evidence, and now he's on every local news channel telling the cabin story like he's reading from a script.
They told me Thursday they'd be going for the cabin for the weekend with their friends. After that, really we just packed up their stuff. They were going to do some minor repairs on the cabin, and we got them tools, just regular going to the cabin stuff, I suppose, and they went with their friends. But I didn't ask who their friends were, so I'm still not really sure. I didn't really bother asking another question, like who they were exactly. Other than that, that was kind of it. And then they headed out at Friday in the morning. Right now we're just trying to get it out there, so I'm talking to the news. We got Facebook posts. Really, that's all we can do. Hopefully detectives will get back to us soon with new information. Apparently they did make it. I got a text on Sunday saying they did make it, and that they were going to White Lake for like a parade and stuff for the 4th. But I was told they'd be home Monday or Tuesday, and Tuesday afternoon I got a little worried. And then Wednesday, when my aunt went to the cabin, that's when I got worried and I went to make a report. My brother should be going to the cabin today just to check it out. We're just kind of keeping busy. As long as we're busy, we're not really going to overthink. They could just be on a boat somewhere having a few drinks or something. No reception on boats, so it's late. Like, the text could have been sent a while ago and it just got to me on Sunday. Maybe tell them to call their kids so we know they're all right.
He lied to Kat. He lied to his parents. I mean, he lied to the police. And now he's lying to the entire state. By early afternoon, he notices something he really didn't want to see. More police, marked cars, unmarked cars, officers coming and going, a clear increase in activity. And Chandler, being Chandler, immediately panics and calls Detective Shunk to ask what's going on. He thinks he's being subtle, but he's basically screaming, "Why are there so many police here? What do you know?" Shunk plays it cool, says it's just shift changes, pretends he has no idea why there's suddenly a swarm of officers outside.
A little confused. I got 2 squads parked right outside my house, and they're not really canvassing. They're just kind of sitting there. Is everything all right?
Yeah, I mean, they're in the area doing canvassing, and they're also probably doing a shift change right now, getting our second shift crew on around 3:30.
Oh, there's 4 now. Something going on that we need to know?
Well, they're probably doing reports. They're probably doing shift change. You know, they've been going around trying to get a hold of neighbors, so I'm wondering if they're in the area trying to catch people now that they're coming home from work. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to any of them in just a little while.
I can't, there's no mail. There's a hold on my mail.
Yeah, nothing done by us, that's for sure.
Because I'm going to need my medical bills.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's kind of stressful. Sorry, so there's nothing new going on?
Not that I'm aware of.
Alright.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep you posted if I hear anything. I mean, obviously with the mail, that has nothing to do with us at all. I've never heard of a detective or law enforcement agency holding somebody's mail. You know, and then as far as everybody in the area, you know, you kind of had to figure we were going to be in the area all day today.
Yeah, I was just wondering why there were 4 cars instead of the canvassing.
Yeah.
Any news about that blue house with the big cameras?
Yeah, I have a detective that's getting footage from the area. I don't know exactly which houses he's gotten video from yet. But yeah,
Sounds like they downloaded all of it and already have it at IT.
Oh, okay. So he's probably reviewing it now.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll give you a holler if anything pops up.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay. Thanks, Chandler.
Thank you.
Bye.
But of course he knows, because what Chandler does not realize is that the police had already been alerted to his weird behavior at the farm days earlier. And not only that, but vultures had been circling above the wooded area. So the dogs went out, the drones went up, and the search kicked off. And that's where they found Bart. That's why the police presence increased. That's why the energy shifted. And that's why the house suddenly became the center of attention. But they didn't want Chandler to know that yet. So Shunk plays it down, hangs up the phone, and not long after, a police escort arrives to take Chandler and Kat in for what he thinks is just a casual chat. And honestly, I hope he enjoyed that last day at home, because July the 8th would turn out to be his last day of freedom. So Chandler walks into the interview room, trying so hard to look calm, but the nerves are written all over him. I mean, he doesn't know why he's here. He doesn't know what they know, and he's absolutely bricking it. The detectives start simple. Walk us through your movements from June 30th to now. That's it. Just a timeline. And somehow, even that basic request sends him in to a full-blown monologue. So he starts rambling about every minute of every day. What he ate, what he watched, what time he breathed. He even finds a way to bring up the fact that there may be blood from all 3 of them in the house during an interview that's supposed to be about his missing parents. And on top of that, he even managed to work in a storyline that explains why the fireplace suddenly exploded. This is the same guy who's been claiming memory loss for his dramatic little fall.
So I guess if you want to start with, let's just go back to last Wednesday.
My dad and I were watching something over lunch. It was the Wheel of Fortune, and we normally have the couch like with our back facing the table we sat at the end of you coming.
Downstairs or upstairs?
Downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah, that room with the TV. I tossed the ball, and I smashed the glass.
Okay.
With the dog's help.
Okay.
I don't know about him, but I got injured.
You said you were injured. What type of injury?
I got a pretty deep hole in my foot,
Why have you been sleeping downstairs again? You told me last
Bathroom.
night. The bathroom's right
I
there.
need to be close because stairs, I can't see too well in the dark now. So
Yeah.
it's Thursday morning. She left for work at 7:30, and then we ate noon 30 or 12:30. Sorry.
Sure.
Then we went inside and had our TV show again, Wheel of Fortune. It's always on around our time for lunch. Or was it Family Feud? The Family Feud was Thursday. Then we just kind of hung out, and my mom gets home, and I start shrimp scampi for my dad, because that's what he wanted, but we didn't have shrimp, so I made shrimpless scampi. That's where they told me while we were eating it, they were going to go with their friends, and I was like, oh, cool.
And they said they were going cabin.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
we're going up north.
Up
That's
north,
how they
right, so-
referred to it. So there we are at Thursday dinner, up north of the cabin. My dad says, I'll need a set for pipe repair and gas. They had most of their duffels already packed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And we all just started bringing them down to the mudroom with the shoes by the garage.
Where you showing me him?
After that, we watched, 7 Underground, with the thrill-seeking, it's like they fake their deaths and they fly airplanes and they fight at the evil of the world by being ghosts. Played a video game called Tarkov till midnight. My parents by then were asleep and got their teeth brushed and everything. Friday morning, I woke up. They had left. I found the folding chairs that they wanted to bring, but they never brought them. I hung out with Kat Friday night, I believe.
What'd you do Friday during the day?
Oh yeah, let's work backwards. I got a trip the day away. I played video games.
Okay. Parents are gone, why not, right?
Yeah, Saturday we didn't do much. She left. Then we get to Sunday. It's the 4th. But I called my mom, I believe, in the morning or along those lines, and I get a text from her. Because it was a text, there was no iMessage, so I kind of just left it at that. They're safe, they're alive. Throughout the day, the dogs, it's just me and the dogs, the fireworks, and the dogs are running around and into things. I'm trying to keep them okay. All they're doing is knocking stuff over.
What was the deal with that?
Fireworks.
Oh, the fireworks
All
are
day.
spooking them so much.
Yeah, all
Yeah,
day.
gotcha.
So I put them both into the Ford, cranked the TV. Rizzo doesn't or maybe does New Girl, the TV show, so we watched that. It's the theme song that gets her, I think. She barks. Cat comes by to help me with the girls. I went to Cat's house Sunday to eat, but we ended up not eating there. We went to Cress's house.
Yeah, I saw the calls to her.
She
That's
helps
your
me out with everything.
Cat's
Mom's girlfriend.
mom's girlfriend. Okay. What'd you guys do at her place?
Well, we took a swim. Then it's Monday morning. She put on New Girl in the couch fort on Monday morning. We're getting later. I have a little bit to eat for lunch. At the end of the day on Monday, I did go, or the afternoon, I did go to the farm to talk to Cress and Kat's mom. And I told them the legs are probably going to be permanent and the headaches should be fixed after the hemorrhage is cleared a little bit. But I talked to them more, and that's when she brought up the housing situation, how she doesn't how my parents are, I guess. I don't know, she doesn't know them that well. She's never met them. And then they're like, well, appreciate you stopping by. So I head out Tuesday morning. Then I'm like, oh, it's Tuesday morning. They should be here. No worried. I think I called my mom that day.
So I might have missed it. So from the time like they left, did you talk to them at all when they were
I got a
up
text.
north? You got the one text.
And I
that you mentioned
don't
earlier.
even like it.
Right?
Yeah.
But that was it? Nothing else?
Yeah. So that's fishy to me, even the text, because I realized Memorial Day is when the White Lake Parade is.
Oh, sure.
There's no 4th of July. Maybe there's cheap drinks, but there's no parade at White Lake on the 4th. So, well, maybe there is now. I got a coffee at a Quick Trip one day. Well, I think that could have been Tuesday morning. Cat's working, and I'm gaming, job hunt, and then I started trying to get the glass. 'Cause I've been a little lazy on the glass. I just kind of had chairs in front of it. I had a broom, and my blood was kind of on the floor, so I got the Swiffer I borrowed from Cat, from the foot. I borrowed a Swiffer to mop. I Swiffered the floor, like not the stone, but the floor. And then I got a little bit in the kitchen, and then everywhere kind of I walked, pretty much. The bathroom, the kitchen, and then all the way up to the laundry room where I found my first aid kit. And I just tried to stop all the bleeding, but it wouldn't stop. So, and then I see the glasses in there, so I grab the tweezers and I pull it out, and then it starts squirting out, like this lid puddles. I pull it a little bit more, but the basement was easy to clean. It's just cement. Wings. I go to Cat's.
Oh, okay.
We had wings.
What time?
And I go home, get the girls all ready for bed, going outside, get them water. Jane calls. I get a picture of the property at the cabin, and I see Dad. So I'm looking at the cabin, and then it doesn't look right. There's a birch tree in front, and I didn't like the look of it, because that didn't just sit right with me a little bit, but it looked like tracks were pushed down into the grass a little bit. I don't know, from the picture. The grass is overgrown, but that's from the storm and the fallen trees. You can't mow there because the flowers.
Wednesday morning, you said you went to the police department.
Yeah, to make talk to them about my parents.
As far as the blood on your foot, how did you clean that up? So we were talking. You had blood on
Swiffer wet jet.
Okay, Swiffer wet jet. Did you use anything else?
Hydrogen peroxide for the tiles and the hard floors. Just the big globs needed a little bit. Like this size pools in the kitchen.
Okay.
I was pinching it pretty dang hard, but which was also cutting deeper because I had might still have another piece of glass.
Is that the biggest pool that you saw?
This was downstairs. This was like a good, 2-3 inch diameter.
Did your dad get injured at all when the glass broke? Did he step on any or?
He sent me up, but I don't doubt it. When he gets mad, he's not thinking. That guy reached in the fireplace and cut off his arm or something. I don't know. Head pain? Do you guys have Tylenol or something? Yeah, I've been getting the migraines from all of the hits and stuff.
Is there any reason to believe Mom or Dad's blood would be somewhere in the house?
Well, my dad scratches his psoriasis till he gushes blood.
Okay. Does he? Does it enough to get on the floor? Does it leave?
Oh yeah.
How much? Talking puddles like that, or just ribbons, or?
It could be enough.
Okay.
My mom's blood. Just from her bloody noses she gets, sometimes when she wakes up, her nose gets bad, not like a regular one. She gets it bad. Well, it's not squirting, but it's just dripping, and she doesn't notice it.
Okay. Is there any reason to believe that in either one of their vehicles there would be any of their blood?
Maybe car trash.
Why would they have blood in their car trashes?
Well, my mom does the bloody noses with the air conditioning. My dad hasn't had them as much as she does, but he gets them.
Okay.
His are worse than my mom's.
Does he ever get them in the house then, or?
Mostly just with air conditioning, and sometimes with the dehumidifier. Oh, there is an outhouse.
Yeah, you want to ask for him?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Advil? Cool. What'd you say?
I got Advil, does that work?
Yeah. I was like, I thought you said Adderall.
No, I don't
No,
know.
not that. Just Advil. Just over the counter stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like 3 of them work?
Yeah. Appreciate it.
You better know what your hand was dropping on that.
Thanks, Tim.
Say Advil on him, right? You put them on your mouth already? Never mind, there they are. No, I just got
So the plumbing one's
truth
crap.
serum.
no.
Is it
Just
like
Advil.
So Chandler walked into that interview room nervous and over-rehearsed. But the moment the detectives let him ramble, even laughing at parts of his nonsense, he relaxed. In his head, he'd pulled it off again. He thought he'd fooled the detectives the same way he'd fooled Katz, his family, and everybody else. What he didn't get is that the police don't operate like people he'd been lying to. They always know more than they say, and they are always one step ahead. He genuinely believed he was about to walk out of that room, but the detectives had already clocked him. His lies weren't clever, consistent, or even interesting. I mean, they were just proof he had no idea how bad his current situation was. And that's exactly why Detective Hendrickson eventually cuts him off and tells him bluntly that the game is over and they know he's lying. It's the first moment Chandler actually freezes.
You know, opposite time. You know how it is with brothers.
Yeah, okay.
You flew the coop with them.
Got a feeling myself.
Yeah.
Alright. And Bill, I read about that.
We got all the background, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, I think it's time to start talking about what happened to your parents. Like the truthful version.
Okay.
Okay? So, we have like 20 pages of writing. We're going to start with a clean, white piece of paper for you to start telling the truth.
Okay. What?
Because listen to me. This is the only chance you're going to have to tell us the truth.
Okay.
Okay? What we, listen. I can't tell you what we know, but we know you're not telling us the truth. We know your parents are no longer with us. Okay? And we know the reason why. Okay? You need to tell the truth. Listen. You need to tell the truth about what happened and just tell us why it happened. Okay? If something happened, if you were defending yourself, or if you just got fed up with stuff, you need to tell us the truth. Okay? This is your chance to tell us why. Okay? I'm not BSing you. Okay? So can we do that?
Okay. They're okay. Lawyer. I'm sorry.
Say it again, Jenny.
Lawyer. Okay. Because they're.
You want a lawyer?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And here's the part Chandler never grasped. He thought this was just a friendly chat. But the moment police found Bart, they understood exactly what was happening. They just didn't have the formal evidence to charge him yet. And at that same time, they needed him off the streets before he could destroy anything else. So they had a dilemma that left them with one viable option, the false missing persons report. If they got him on tape repeating those lies in detail, they could arrest him for that alone. His signature was already on the forms. The interview would simply lock it in. That's why they let him talk for nearly 2 hours. They knew it was fiction, but it served a purpose. So once they had him on tape lying, they could arrest him and stick him in jail, which would then, by the time they needed to formally identify Bart and process everything else at the farm. It was a classic police move, and it worked. They knew he'd lie, and he did. And that was enough to formally arrest him.
That's right on the time there. It's about 6:41.
You're under arrest. Okay?
Okay. What happened? Okay.
You know what happened. We're not going to tell you what happened. You know what happened. You were there when it happened. We're not BSing you, okay?
I wasn't there when it happened.
We know more than you think we know.
I understand. Okay.
There's people that have told us things. We have evidence. We have proof. What more has happened. Okay. So your parents never made it to the cabin, and I think you know that. Okay. So you're asking for an attorney. We're not going to ask any more questions.
Stand.
Stand up.
You want to stand up and just come over here for me? Do you have any in your pockets at all?
So now, before we move on, there is something I just wanted to point out quickly. So at the start of this story, I mentioned how much Chandler supposedly loved his dogs. The whole family did. He talked about them constantly, especially how scared they were of loud noises. And on the surface, that sounds relatable. My own dog, Roxy, is exactly the same. On bonfire night, she spends the entire evening under the beds, shaking, refusing to go outside or to eat anything. And the next day, she's back to normal. I know plenty of people watching this will recognize that behavior in their own pets. But when you look at Chandler's behavior with that in mind, something doesn't add up. So he made a point of telling people that Rizzo was scared of loud noises. Yet this is the same man who fired multiple rounds from an assault rifle inside that house. So anyone who has ever heard a gunshot, let alone inside a confined space, knows how unbelievably loud that is. If Chandler genuinely cared about how Rizzo reacted to loud noises, why would he do that? And beyond the noise, think about what that dog actually witnessed. The violence, the aftermath, the smell, the chaos. If Rizzo didn't have issues before, she certainly would after. So no, I take it back. Chandler did not care about those dogs. He used them the same way he used everything else in his life, as props to make himself look like a decent person. And when you see the reality of what happened inside that house, it becomes painfully clear that he wasn't capable of caring about anyone or anything but himself. So while Chandler is in one interview room lying and getting arrested, Kat is in the other. She's calm, she's open, she's honest because she has nothing to hide. She walks detectives through their weekend, answers every question, and you can hear this sincerity in every word. She talks about how normal the family was, how much Bart and Krista adored Chandler, how they'd all sit together and play Mario Kart. I mean, she never once considered that Chandler could be involved.
Mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she drove him to every swim meet, every soccer game, every school event she was there, helped make the t-shirts and the flyers, like Eagle Scout, Boy Scout, went to prom with Miss Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, popular kid. This is one of the many photos in his photo album. Baby Chandler. Toddler, like, early Chandler. Chandler with glasses. Because he roasted me for wearing bifocals.
He wears contacts then, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Call this later Hosen Chandler.
Nice.
Very active. He was Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast in middle school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. His mom still showed me the video.
Tell me about Florida. So that's where SpaceX was. That's where he was supposed to go. What was the plan?
Go down there.
You too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what did that mean?
Okay. Just gonna go down there.
Did you guys have, like, everything lined up? Like, when were you supposed to...
He was supposed to leave the Saturday of the fall. So, happened on Thursday, Friday. He's supposed to leave Saturday morning.
Say Titusville?
Titusville, Florida.
Is that where the school is?
SpaceX.
SpaceX, I mean.
So, like, obviously it's, like, hard after, like, finding out, like, oh, that's probably jeopardized, and then it was, so. Is he being interviewed, too, or is he done?
Honestly, I'm with you, so I don't know.
There's a fiery smell on Friday because when he broke the, when glass thing on the fireplace, like ash, was, like...
Exposed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, it smells like a fire. So maybe by extension, grilling.
Okay. Chandler talk about any firearms that he has?
His friend did gift him one.
Okay. What is that?
Something you hold like a rifle.
Yeah. Something like that.
Like a rifle?
Mm-hmm. His friend's in the military, so.
Oh.
And then, like, they're supposed to be back early Tuesday morning if they didn't make it back Monday night. It's like, his dad's very punctual. His mom was supposed to work Tuesday. And I was like, hey, like, have you heard from them? And he's like, no, not yet. I'm like, okay, well, has Mitch heard from them? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, you should maybe ask Mitch. He's like, I don't want to make him worry. And I'm like, well, even just ask, like, hey, his mom sent you pictures of the cabin or anything, you know? Like I said, it's so unusual to not hear from his mom.
You don't think he had anything to do with his mom and dad being unheard from?
No. I just, no. No. All my friends I've talked to, they're like, no. Not Chandler, no. Like, that'd be crazy. Sorry to sound very monotone right now, but, like, just no. No. Mm-mm.
No?
No.
Not a mean bone in his body?
Well, everyone has a mean bone. They even said Mother Teresa was a dick sometimes, like. But I just don't see him killing Mr. and Mrs. Halderson. Like, he had SpaceX. Like, why would he jeopardize something he, like, would dream of, you know? Like, they're his parents. For Christmas, they got him and his brother matching tool sets. Like, come on. He cooks dinner for them. They have root beer floats together. They play Mario Kart whenever his parents want to. Like...
And any friends or relatives that they've been having problems with that you can think of? No?
No. I mean, Miss Halderson didn't really like Mr. Halderson's side of the family, but they're also, like, Republican, conservative, and she's, like, very Democrat. So. I just can't see someone killing them. Like, that's the thing. Like, if someone killed them, it would have to be someone they, like, didn't know. Like, I just can't see them, like, owing a loan shark money and then, like, them getting him. Or, like, having problems with the mob, you know? They're just not that type of people. Like, no one wants to think that anything happened to them. And, like, Like, we haven't talked about other alternatives. We're like, what would happen if something happened to his parents? I just don't even think he wants to think about it.
So after Kat had spent the last few hours doing her very best to help in any way she could, the officers saw an opportunity. And rather going down the route of getting a warrant, they simply asked her if she'd be willing to let them download her phone. She agreed. And that decision turned out to be a major breakthrough for investigators.
We're trying to verify some things that
Well, you
Chandler's
have all the timestamps,
saying.
right? So, I mean, you have all the pictures. So we have a guy that could download it while you're here. Like, you wouldn't have to leave it with us. What would you say, this first until...
The first until...
Today.
July 1st until today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It won't need. It's 3578.
3578.
So during the extraction, they recovered a Snapchat screenshot that placed Chandler in the Roxbury area on Saturday morning, a detail that gave detectives their first real sense of where to search. So Krista's remains wouldn't be found for several more days. But without that location data, they wouldn't have even known where to begin. So while Chandler is in one interview room and Kat in another, Mitchell and his fiancée, Caitlin, are already on the road heading north to the family cabin. They couldn't sit around and wait anymore. So Mitchell actually does have a key, but when he tries it, it doesn't work. So the deputies forced the door, went inside and searched the cabin properly. And what did they find? Nothing. Uneventful, but crucial. It confirmed the cabin wasn't the answer.
Sheriff's office, anybody inside? Announce your presence, make yourselves known. Clear over here.
Okay. Got closed door straight, closed door right. Place used to look a lot different back in the day.
Oh, sure.
Oh, lawn was mowed.
Yeah. Lost a couple of trees. This one's clear.
Okay, I don't know what this is here behind you. Holy shit. Yep. But there's they come up here a couple times a year if the neighbors know that, and you have a nice little beach here, they might just kind of poach on your little territory here.
So after Chandler was arrested, police booked him on the only charge they could file immediately, giving false information in a missing persons case. So his bond was set at around $10,000, but it didn't matter. I mean, Chandler had no job, no income, no savings, and no access to his parents' accounts. While he sat in jail, detectives kept working. They searched the house. They searched the property. They pulled apart his digital activity. Plus, on top of that, they still needed to formally identify Bart's torso. So they'd actually found it on the day of Chandler's interrogation. And everyone knew exactly who it belonged to. But legally, we know it's him isn't enough until the medical examiner completed the formal identification detectives couldn't file the major charges. In the same window, detectives also acted on a lead obtained during Kat's interview, a location Chandler had been at that he could not explain. So a search team went out, and that's when they recovered Krista's limbs, confirming they now had remains from both parents before the July 15th hearing. That's also why there's a gap between the arrest on July 8th and the first major hearing on July 15th. Detectives were building the homicide case and waiting for the evidence to be airtight. So when Chandler finally appeared in court on the 15th over Zoom, the tone was completely different. This wasn't about lying to police anymore. The prosecution asked for his bond to be raised to $1 million because they were now filing charges that would define the rest of the case. So first degree intentional homicide, hiding a corpse, and mutilating a corpse. By the time the case reached a jury, this wasn't a missing persons investigation anymore. It was a full homicide prosecution backed by a mountain of evidence. So once Chandler was in jail, you'd think the lies would stop. But the jail calls showed the opposite.
Hello, this is a free call from
Chandler Halderson.
Before July 8th, you can understand why Kat believed him. She trusted him. She loved him. But after the arrest, Chandler was still lying, and Kat was still believing him. I mean, on those calls, he went straight back to his default setting, spinning stories, downplaying everything, insisting the police were exaggerating.
I know, yeah, the news has made it sound very bad, but just talking to my lawyers and everything, it's much different than the news. The news has putting a very bad spin on everything.
And Kat, who loved Bart and Krista, was still giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Oh, I really wanted to thank you for everything.
I would like to believe you do the same for me.
You know I would.
I know.
Thanks for the call. I love you.
I love you more. I love you the most.
I love you too.
And it wasn't just Kat. Her mum, Dulce, was on the calls too.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Okay. Keep praying. Catherine cut my hair.
Oh, yeah. I heard she did a good job, and she's pretty proud of herself.
Yeah, it's short. I want you to know that I love you like a son.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you've been very good to me.
This is where the manipulation becomes almost unbelievable. Chandler had been lying to Dulce for months. Not just about the fall, but about Bart and Krista. He told her they were horrible parents. He told her they suddenly hated Kat. He told her Kat was banned from the house. He painted himself as mistreated, misunderstood, and pushed out. I mean, none of it was true. But Chandler said it with such confidence, such consistency, that Dulce believed him. She started to dislike Bart and Krista, two people who had done nothing wrong. He wasn't bad-mouthing his parents for sympathy. He was doing it to set up his next move. So when the lies were getting too heavy to juggle, Chandler came up with a new plan. Make Dulce and Cress feel so sorry for him that they'd invite him to move in. Then he could slide into their house, live off them, keep Kat close, and escape the pressure at home. I mean, it was manipulation layered on manipulation. Even after the arrest, even after the evidence, even after the charges, Chandler still had Kat and Dulce in his ear. So after all the lies, all the searches, and all the jail calls, we finally get to the part everyone's been waiting for, the trial. And instead of doing what most people facing life usually do, delaying, filing motions, dragging things out, Chandler does the opposite. He demands a speedy trial. And honestly, most cases never even make it to trial. The majority of criminal cases end in plea deals, not courtroom battles. Defendants drag things out because it buys time to negotiate a better deal. It gives the defense more time to find weakness. Witnesses forget things, evidence gets older, and mentally it delays the moment the hammer drops. Time is the defense's best friend. But here's the thing. There was never going to be a plea deal in this case. Why? Because the evidence wasn't just strong, it was overwhelming. You can't negotiate when the prosecution is holding a royal flush and all you have is a napkin. And Chandler, he genuinely believed this ridiculous story he'd built was somehow going to survive a courtroom. Meanwhile, he sat through the entire trial like a damp towel. So while most defendants are dragging their feet, hoping for a miracle, Chandler sprints toward the trial like he's about to win something. So the trial kicks off in early January 2022. And then, because this case cannot go 5 minutes without something happening, he tests positive for COVID. So the whole thing just hard stops. Court shuts down and the speedy trial takes a week off. So it doesn't restart until January 18th. So now before we get into the courtroom drama, the judge, the lawyers, the openings, we need to be crystal clear about what Chandler is actually on trial for. So let's break it down like real humans. Chandler isn't just on trial for murder. He is facing 8 counts. And every single one of them tells you something about what he did. And just so we're clear, before we go through them, he pled not guilty to all of it.
Not guilty pleas will be entered to all 8 counts within the information.
So 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicides. So this charge means you didn't panic. You meant to do this. You decided to kill. This is the top shelf murder charge. There is no oops in this. So 2 counts of mutilating a corpse. So this isn't moving a body. This is cutting, dismembering, destroying their remains after the fact. It's the legal system saying what you did to them didn't stop when they died. So 2 counts of hiding a corpse. So this covers the dumping, the concealment, the attempts to make sure nobody found them. The part where he tries to erase them from the world and carry on like nothing happened. And lastly, 2 counts of providing false information about a missing person. So these are the lies he told during the missing parents phase, the fake cabin trip, the made-up messages, the stories he fed officers while they were trying to find his parents. So the law doesn't shrug that off. They charge it. So when we say 8 counts, it's not random and it's not padding. It's the legal system walking through this case step by step and saying, you killed them, you cut them up, you tried to hide what you did, and you lied to everybody. That's the full picture. So with that all in mind, we can finally begin. So at this stage, the jury's been picked, everybody is in their seats, and Judge John D. Hyland is presiding. And let me just say this straight away. I love this judge. He is so nice. I mean, judges have real power, and some of them walk around like they invented the law, but not Hyland. He's one of those people who has a high authority job, a courtroom full of people waiting on his every word, and you'd never know it from how he behaves. But don't get it twisted. Being nice doesn't mean he's going easy on anyone. Chandler is not getting any of that warmth, and quite right too. Now, on the prosecution side, we've got DA William Brown as lead prosecutor and Andrea Raymond as co-prosecutor. And I've got to say, they were excellent, thorough, calm, respectful. They knew they were talking about things that were hard to hear, and they delivered everything with this steady, careful tone. So then we look over at the defense table, Catherine Dorrell and Crystal Vera. And listen, they had a tough job. They knew it. And honestly, they acted like they knew it. I mean, don't expect them to be objecting every 5 seconds or grilling every witness. In fact, most of the time, they didn't even bother with a cross-examination. So with the courtroom set, we move on to opening statements.
My name is William Brown. I'm the Deputy District Attorney of Dane County. Yesterday you met Andrea Raymond. Together we're the prosecutors in the case. Our job is to, over the course of the next couple of weeks, present evidence to show you the path of what we believe happened, which is that Chandler Halderson killed his parents, dismembered their bodies, and hid them around southern Wisconsin. That's Bart and Krista Halderson, a couple in their early 50s, living in Windsor, Wisconsin, on a quiet street. They have 2 sons, Chandler, the defendant, and his older brother, Mitchell. The time this all happened, living in the Halderson home, was Bart Halderson, Krista Halderson, and Chandler. Mitchell had moved out. Now, all of the events I'm going to describe, for the most part, take place during the first week of July, from the 1st to about the 8th. So I put up a calendar, but it's to provide some reference, and I put the little flag on there, because if you remember this year, the 4th of July was on a Sunday. Everyone celebrated, of course, all weekend. A lot of places celebrated on Saturday, but the 4th of July was on a Sunday. What I expect to prove beyond any reasonable doubt is that on July 1st, 2021, somewhere between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m., Chandler Halderson murdered his parents. But the story doesn't start there. And this trial wouldn't be 3 to 4 weeks if the trial ended there. The story starts a week later. On July 7th, 2021, nearly a week after killing his parents, but no one in the world knowing, Chandler Halderson walks into the Northeast Precinct of the Dane County Sheriff's Office and says, "I'd like to file a missing persons report." He gives this bizarre story of his parents leaving in an unknown car, going to a cabin with an unknown couple, with an unknown amount of money, for really an unknown reason. So sheriff's deputies do what cops do, which is they ask him, "Have you heard from him?" And he says, "Yeah. I got a text from my mom." And he did. Made it safely. Can't get anything through, though. Yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade. We'll be home Monday night, Tuesday early. I love you lots. But what good police do, and what they did in this case, is they start looking into the people who saw them last. It was Chandler Halderson. So what the police did was started to look into Chandler Halderson. He's a Madison College student, MATC. They go by Madison College now, if you didn't get the email. Madison College student. He's about to graduate. He'd recently been working at American Family Insurance. He's working from home like most of us the last couple of years. And not only was he working a good job, Chandler had just gotten a better job. He got hired at SpaceX. He's planning to move to Titusville, Florida. That's where SpaceX operation is, down in Florida, with his girlfriend. They'd rented an apartment. They'd bought a car. Not someone who was antisocial. He was working with the Madison Police and the Department of Natural Resources on their rescue diving team. The only thing that was a bit odd is he'd recently suffered a head injury, fallen down the stairs, had terrible concussion, was unable to move for the most part, had to wear a neck brace. He was permanently, perhaps injured. All of those things threw police off from thinking it was Chandler. He had anything to do with this. The Langlade County Sheriff's Department is searching a cabin. No one had ever been there. They start talking to people who were with Chandler that weekend. Specifically, they talked to his girlfriend, a young girl named Catherine. She goes by Kat. And Kat says, we had a normal 4th of July weekend. We went out to my family's farm. We got a farm. There was a pool. We ate dinner. So the police, what do they do next? They go talk to the person who owns the farm. And they say, was Chandler out here? And she goes, yeah, he was out here on the 4th of July. But you know what? He showed up the next day by himself. And she goes, he asked to use the pool. But about an hour later, she goes down to the pool to check on him. He's not there. So she goes in the pool. She says, then I see Chandler. He's walking out of the woods in that area. And I promise the photos are only going to go this far for right now. But the police walked about 20 yards into the woods, and in that pile of debris, under dozens of sticks, bushes, and dirt, they found Bart Halderson. Now, when I say they found Bart Halderson, I need to explain that. They found a human torso. Someone had crudely chopped off the head, the arms, and sawed off the legs in the middle of the thigh, leaving the underwear on, and the beginnings of the pants. They rolled the torso over. There were gunshots in the back. This man had been shot in the back and chopped up. Another detective said, that spot where Chandler was walking out of the woods, there's an oil barrel there, like an old fuel tank with a hole in it. That's right where the car was parked. So she peeks her head in, and that's what she sees. All of them tested by the state crime lab. All of them covered in human flesh and blood of Bart and Krista Halderson. But they ask him, and he's at the house, and they ask him and his girlfriend to come downtown with them. And they do. And that girlfriend, Kat, is in one room, and Chandler is in another. Chandler, for over an hour, meets with police, and again regurgitates this odd story of his parents with this missing couple in a random car. Where Kat, in the other room, she's vomiting information to the police. But she said, at 8:58 in the morning, when he was supposed to be doing chores on Saturday, July 3rd, I thought it was strange that he was in what appears to be a forest on the banks of the Wisconsin River. The police took that. They identified immediately where that location was, just based on looking at it. That's a bridge. Couldn't be hard. Out they go. The search team starts searching. Very quickly, they find the remains of Krista Halderson. Now, when I say Krista Halderson, I have to qualify that as well. We found her legs. One complete leg, then somewhat farther away in another bush, a foot, a thigh, but the same pattern. Crudely cut apart with appears to be hand saws, axes, things of that sort. So Chandler's taken to jail. Now, when I started with that calendar a while ago, and I said the police were initially thrown off because of one thing, and that was this text message from Krista. And it's real. I'll tell you, that text message is in all the search warrant returns from US Cellular. It's on the phone. So the police started looking into that. And the first thing they found was White Lake. Their parade was on July 3rd. Remember, the 4th of July this year was on a Sunday. So everyone celebrated on Saturday. So they started thinking, well, how the hell did this message get sent? So they searched the Halderson home, where Chandler was. And in the garage, under a shelf, in a shoe, wrapped in aluminum foil, was his mother's phone. Chandler sent it to himself. How does this kid, with everything in the world going for him, promising new jobs, school, a girlfriend that loves him, willing to move across the country for him, and what you'll learn, it happens because none of these things are true. He wasn't going to Madison College. He wasn't studying renewable resource engineering. The people at American Family Insurance, they'd never even heard of him. There's no indication he'd ever even applied for a job, much less had any job at SpaceX. The apartment he told his girlfriend he'd rented and the car he'd bought, none of that was real. The Madison police, they don't even have a scuba diving team. Neither does the DNR. And this concussion he apparently suffered, he did go to the hospital. You'll hear from the doctor who was there. He said, yeah, he came in, he reported that he hit his head, falling down the stairs. I diagnosed him with a mild concussion, gave him a neck brace on the way out, told him he could use it if he needed it. But none of the things that Chandler reported to other people, the leg weakness, his inability to move, drive, travel, none of that was real. And given what you're going to find out in this case, you may conclude at the end of it, he never suffered any fall at all. What you may conclude is that it was all made up. Now, police started looking into all of these lies. How are you able to keep this up? How are you able to catfish your family? And they started to find things around the Halderson home in the email accounts of Bart and Krista Halderson, in the email accounts of Chandler Halderson. When they talked about American Family Insurance, the first big lie Chandler was making up, again, the people at American Family Insurance, you'll hear them testify, they're directors of human resources. He never worked there. So his father would ask him questions pretty much daily. Why don't you have any money? First it was, well, I'm a salary guy, but they were accidentally paying me hourly, so they just held my paychecks until they fixed it. Then it was, well, I gave him the wrong direct deposit info. And then it kind of shifted eventually. And he said, well, they were going to pay me, but now the amount is so much, they got to pay me so much money that when they deposited it in the bank, they thought it was fake. Now here's where the story gets maybe a little more complex. Having a fake job solves a lot of riddles in your life. No one's hassling you to get a new job. No one's hassling you to do chores all day. The problem is, if your dad works from home, you actually have to wake up early every day and go to work. So there he was. Messages between Bart and Chandler. Hey, are you up for your meetings? Yeah. Over and over again. So Chandler woke up, but he had nothing to do all day because his job was pretend. And so he sat on his computer playing video games. Now, Mr. Smith, Mr. Halderson, became kind of best friends. He'll tell you that Chandler really liked an SKS rifle when they play some of these shooting games. So when he visited him this year in June, he brought with him a gift, the SKS rifle that was found about 100 yards from Bart Halderson's body. So at this point, Mr. Halderson's working a pretend job at American Family Insurance. He's not getting paid. His father, who's an accountant, is kind of on his case about it. And he's got to figure out something else. American Family wasn't going well, so Mr. Halderson decided to get a new job. He's going to be an astronaut. I work at SpaceX. This is messages to his girlfriend. I have a good feeling about SpaceX. I have a follow-up interview for Florida tomorrow. Shoot, sorry, I got the job. I have training next week over the computer and leave June 11th and start June 14th. He didn't give himself a lot of time, but what he gave himself was an escape hatch. He could move. He could end the lies that he had going on in his life about being a rescue scuba diver and working for American Family Insurance by simply moving to Florida. That presented with it one major problem, which was that job, which was also make-believe, would pay absolutely no better than the last job that was make-believe. So in late June, as he's supposed to start the job at SpaceX in Florida for Elon Musk, his older brother gets hospitalized. That's real. It happened. Got diagnosed with diabetes and was having some complications. He's doing great now. Mr. Halderson uses that as an excuse to delay starting at SpaceX. So roughly a week later, when Chandler Halderson needs to think of a new lie to get out of the SpaceX lie, guess who ends up in the hospital, being doted over by his mother. Now, around this time, Chandler started telling people an extraordinarily bizarre set of claims. That he had a brain bleed, a hematoma, that he had spinal damage, that he needed his head drilled open, that he had inability to use his legs at all, couldn't drive, people had to do that for him, that he had nerve damage, that he needed to get a colostomy bag. But most importantly, he couldn't go to Florida. The doctors had told him he couldn't fly. Of course, that's not true. You'll see his medical records and you'll see his doctor testify. People were making him meals. You'll see notes his mom was leaving for him. Call this neighbor if you need anything. Couldn't drive, couldn't work, couldn't do chores. Now, a bit of a preview and a fast forward. This guy who's wearing a neck brace nearly every day in late June 2021 would have no problem just days later carrying large bags of ice out of gas stations to chill his father's cut-up body in a freezer. And you'll note, no neck brace. So the job lies are over for Chandler in his life. American Family Insurance, don't worry about that because he got this new job at SpaceX. In SpaceX, I can't go because I'm hurt. It was a perfect scenario. But there was one last lie that Chandler had to get out of. And that is he had told everyone he was going to MATC for college and that he was about to graduate. He did go to MATC for like a semester. He failed out. But he wasn't going there anymore. And the parents were starting to grow suspicious. The lie about going to MATC or Madison College was the most extensive. There were emails, dozens, if not hundreds of emails going back and forth between supposed advisors at MATC and Chandler, and then he'd forward them to his dad from people like someone named Alyssa Brandt, 64. Sometimes Chandler would spell Brandt, B-R-A-N-D-T, sometimes just with a T and no D, depended on the day. But they all had the @Gmail address, not at madisoncollege.edu. And you'll hear from the people at Madison College, their people have real emails, they don't use Gmail. But it was over and over again. Alyssa Brandt was one of them. You heard about Daniel Spieth, also at Gmail. There was someone named Aaron Hoover, also at Gmail. In this one, Chandler's getting upset. I have to have a call with whomever's in charge within the next 30 minutes. I have been a student for over 3 years and I will be treated fairly. Of course, he's yelling at himself, back and forth to himself, and eventually to his dad. There was one name that stood out, Omar Job. Bart Halderson, Chandler's dad, called MATC and pretended to be Chandler to try to finally get some information on what's going on. But toward the end of the call, Bart asked Omar Job, hey, do any of these people work there? Alyssa Brandt, Daniel Spieth, Aaron Hoover. And he's told no, they've never worked there. And in fact, they haven't. And he says, that'll be it then. That'll be it then are the last recorded words of Bart Halderson alive. Bart Halderson, shortly after that, sends a text message. A text message that ultimately sealed his fate, which was a text to his own son. And it says, I spoke with Omar Job. And when you look at Bart Halderson's work calendar that he maintains at his accounting firm, you see something quite interesting. Remember at the beginning, I said I wanted you to remember a date and a time, which was that the Haldersons were killed between 3 and 5 p.m. on July 1st, 2021. Guess what was on Bart's calendar at that exact time? He was supposed to have a meeting with the people at MATC with his son. So he was supposed to go to MATC and have this meeting at 3 o'clock on July 1st. Of course, that meeting couldn't happen because he wasn't going there and none of the people were real. But Bart Halderson knew that. And so Chandler had obviously figured that out at this point. Chandler Halderson wakes up on July 1st and starts messaging his girlfriend. 7:26, I hardly slept. 7:27, stuff hasn't been going well for me lately. Just trying to plan for the next thing to fuck me over. 7:51, I had a great future planned. It's falling apart. 1:04, just 2 hours prior to the murders. I overheard they might go to the cabin with their friends, but I don't know. That's the moment Chandler Halderson decides to kill his parents. Bart Halderson's getting ready to go to MATC for this meeting. Bart texts Chandler, I'm ready whenever you are. That's about 50 minutes prior to when he was killed. Those are the last words ever recorded of Bart Halderson. What the evidence will show in this case is that sometime after the I'm ready whenever you are message, and probably just around 3 o'clock when he was supposed to go to this meeting with MATC, Bart Halderson was shot in the back multiple times with a high-powered rifle. And after shooting his dad, Chandler texts his mom, Dad's phone died. Text her, call me. And get soda on your way home. I have an extra hour of work. You know he didn't have an extra hour of work, but he was delaying her getting there. She responds, K, I can, smiley face. Those are the last words of Krista Halderson alive. And she's never seen again until her legs are found out by the Wisconsin River. But just after killing his mom and his dad, the evidence in this case will show that Chandler went on his phone. And the note reads, weekend chores, H2O2 lemon. So Chandler writes a note after murdering his parents, H2O2 lemon. Door handles, move your shit upstairs, get a job, and clean the floor. He then does just that. Spends the afternoon cleaning the house. They say they're good nights, and Chandler says, I'm going to bed. But he doesn't. He goes to gas stations. He's carrying out large bags of ice. Because what Chandler had done that night is what you all probably suspect by now. He had dismembered his parents, or at least started the process, and had to fit them inside of freezers that were in the Halderson home. And you'll see some of these freezers, they're cleaned, but there's still some evidence around. That night, what appears to have happened, what the evidence will show, is Mr. Halderson took items from around the house and began cutting apart his parents. Saw blades covered in Bart and Krista's blood. An axe Bart and Krista's blood. Handsaws, things of that sort, covered in Bart and Krista's blood. And he had a plan. It wasn't a well-thought-out plan, but he had one. And that was he was going to burn the remains in the family fireplace there in the house. The evidence in this case will show that what happened was the fire had gotten out of control, burning these human remains. Human fat was rendering out. It was igniting. So Chandler threw water on it. But when you throw water on your residential fireplace, you break the glass. And that's exactly what happened. The police noticed something interesting about this photograph, which is, despite being clearly used, the logs are rebuilt. Someone had cleaned out all the ashes and rebuilt it. Clean logs, newspaper, one burnt piece in the middle. But what stuck out to police right away was that little rock right there. They thought, what is that? So they pulled it off and they put it on one of these fancy police deals. And the forensic anthropologist took one look at it. And she said, oh, this is a human skull. He had burned his parents' heads in that fireplace. Later, the police would go through the ash trap of that fireplace, and they would find human remains. Facial bones, the knee bones, which, because we found Krista's legs, by deduction, had to be Bart. Now, burnt remains can't be tested for DNA. There's no biological material left. But they're able to tell it's human based on the structure of the bone. So that's what happened on July 1st. Obviously, things weren't going well burning his parents' remains, so the next day, perhaps not having slept, he walked into Fleet Farm at 7:21 a.m. to buy a tarp. The next day, Saturday, July 3rd, 2021, his girlfriend leaves early in the morning. That's the day she snaps that picture of him out by the Wisconsin River dumping off his mom's remains. July 4th, 2021, this is the day he texts himself. Spends the day with his girlfriend's family, goes to their farm to use the pool. That's the day he says, hey, can I come back tomorrow? The next day, he goes out to the farm to supposedly use the pool where he's seen walking out of the woods. The next day, not much happens. The next day, he drives back to the farm, throws a bag of bloody rags into their garbage can, and at 11:22, he texts his girlfriend that he's finally going to the police. The next day, he starts Googling body found, Wisconsin dismembered body found. He's walking door to door, asking about security cameras in his neighborhood. And at 4 p.m., they take him downtown, and they arrest him at 6:41. So that's the story. That's why you're here for a couple weeks.
Then it was the defense's turn, and I was genuinely curious. Because what do you even say when the state's opening basically lays out a mountain of evidence before lunch? So Attorney Dorrell gets up, and to be honest, it was not impressive. I mean, sometimes you hear a defense opening and think, okay, maybe you might have an angle here. Not this time. I mean, her entire argument was basically, well, we don't know exactly what happened in that house, so unless the murders were filmed, you can't say he's guilty.
Chandler Halderson is 23 years old, young man. He likes to play video games, play with his dogs, hang out with his girlfriend, and he lived peacefully in his parents' home. He was just a normal kid. He is a normal kid. So what did happen? What happened to the Haldersons? What happened in that Halderson's home? Remember those questions. They won't be answered at the end of this trial. Remember those questions at the end of this trial when you have to decide whether the state has proven to you that Chandler Halderson killed his parents, because they simply don't know what happened. They just told you what they think happened. We heard a lot of detail of the before and a lot of detail of the after. But one or two simple sentences, and then he killed his parents. The evidence will show you that there is a gap of evidence when it comes to that time frame. Assumption is the mother of all mistakes. The story that you just heard assumes that Chandler Halderson killed his parents. You cannot assume anything. Now, I'm not going to have a fancy PowerPoint here, and I'm probably not even going to talk very much longer. But as I comment to you on the evidence that you're going to see in this case, I want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, lack of evidence is evidence just as much as any evidence that is presented to you in the courtroom. Look for what's missing. Look for alternate explanations. Because the second thing I want to tell you is that evidence of one thing is not necessarily evidence of another thing. One fact here could mean a different fact here, but it also could mean 3 or 4 other facts. So you have to avoid jumping to conclusions and really dig deep and look at what this all means. Because you just aren't going to know what happened. You're going to know some about the before. You're going to know some about the after. But you're not going to know what happened in the Haldersons' home, who did it, what happened, how it went down, whether it was intentional or not, which is an element of homicide. You're just not going to know. Be sure to look for what you're not told, because that's evidence just as much as any evidence is. I'm going to ask you to resist some things in this case as jurors. What that means is you must resist guessing. You must resist speculation. You must resist storytelling. And only convict when it's proven, or if it's proven, which it won't be, beyond a reasonable doubt. At the end of this case, Attorney Vera and I may stand before you here and say, you know what? They did convict him of this, but what evidence do you have of murder?
Low efforts. Doesn't even cover it. Why bother even getting up? I mean, it was weak. She knew it. We knew it. The jury definitely knew it. And then the moment that should honestly be studied in law schools. So she stands there in a courtroom full of people who have heard the evidence preview and says with a completely straight face, Chandler Halderson did not murder his parents.
If you do those things, if you can resist these things, you will reach the right conclusion. Chandler Halderson did not murder his parents.
I mean, I'm sorry, but holding that line without laughing or spontaneously combusting, I mean, that takes discipline. That takes focus. That takes Olympic level acting. Because the second those words left her mouth, I mean, her credibility didn't just wobble, it packed a suitcase and left the building. I mean, honestly, she deserves a medal for that one. Not for the argument that was hanging on by dental floss, but for the sheer willpower it must have taken to say it out loud without bursting into tears of laughter.
At this point in time, we have to do a slight bit of housekeeping, and the state will call its first witness.
First on the stand, as is normal, the police. So when Chandler first reports his parents missing, the people who show up aren't detectives. It's the patrol officers. And today, they get Chandler. So Windsor isn't exactly Gotham City. So this was way above the usual Tuesday workloads. They take his statement, walk around the house, and try to make sense of the story he's been feeding them, which in hindsight is like trying to assemble flat pack furniture with instructions written in crayon. But even these frontline officers can feel something's off. So they do exactly what good patrol officers do. They escalate it.
He had not had contact with his parents, that they had gone up to their cabin, which is up north in Langley County, and he was concerned. He stated that they had grabbed several bottles of liquor. He then went on to tell me that his father had grabbed a large sum of cash, about $4,000, and this was also unusual.
So before we move on, there's one officer I need to highlight. Deputy Hayley Collins Lefebvre, because she deserves her own moments. I mean, she was thorough, clear, and genuinely helpful, whilst also chewing gum, like she was auditioning for a role in a high school hallway scene. I mean, the testimony was solid, but visually, it looked like she'd been dragged straight from her lunch break and forgot she was about to be broadcasted to the entire country. It's one of those things when you're listening, like, yes, this is great information, but your eyes are screaming, please, for the love of professionalism, spit the gum out. So every time she turned her head, the gum did a little cameo appearance of its own. And look, I watch a lot of this stuff, hours and hours of trials every day, making these videos. I mean, sometimes I genuinely think I am losing my mind from lack of sleep. But watching her testimony, I had to rewind it so many times because I physically could not stop focusing on the gum. So she'd be chewing it. Then it looked like she'd swallowed it. So I'm thinking, great, perfect. Now I can actually concentrate on what she's saying. But no, out of nowhere, the gum returns. She's chewing again. Then it looked like she swallows it again. But then it comes back again. At one point, I wasn't sure if she had one piece of gum, 3 pieces of gum, or if the gum itself was respawning like a video game character. I mean, this has nothing to do with the case, but this is what happens when you watch trials all day, every day. You slowly stop being a normal person and start obsessing over courtroom gum physics at 3 a.m.
During the course of your investigation, did Mr. Halderson present any proof or any evidence that he had been contacted by his parents since July 1st, 2021?
Yes, he had shown me a text message on his phone that he stated was from his mom, and he'd received that shortly after 11 a.m. on July 4th, and it stated something to the effect of, we made it, we're going to a parade, and we will be home late Monday or early Tuesday.
And of course, you're meeting on a Wednesday.
Correct.
Mr. Halderson. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
One moment. No questions, thank you.
May this witness be excused and released from her subpoena.
So next up is Detective Brian Shunk. So the detective you've already met during the interrogation. And just to be clear, this isn't the only time you'll see him on the stands. That's why, for most of the trial, he's seated at the prosecution table. So detectives sit there because the prosecution needs immediate access to the person who knows the case inside out. If a witness says something unexpected, if a timeline needs confirming, or if a piece of evidence needs context, the prosecutor can turn to the detective and get the answer instantly. Some trials don't have detectives at the table because the case is simpler or their involvement is minimal. But in a case like this, layered, digital, forensic, and built on dozens of moving parts, having Shunk right there wasn't optional, it was strategic. And on the other side of the courtroom, you might have noticed something similar happening on the defense table. So alongside Chandler's 2 defense attorneys, there's a woman seated with them throughout the entire trial. So she isn't a lawyer, she's one of the defense investigators. Defense teams sometimes bring an investigator to the table for the same reason the prosecution brings detectives. They need someone who knows the case inside out. A defense investigator helps with things like tracking inconsistencies in witness testimony, checking timelines as they unfold in real time, passing notes about evidence or prior statements, flagging anything that might help with cross-examination, and keeping the defense organized when the case is complex. I mean, not every trial has a defense investigator sitting at the table. I mean, if the case is simple, or if the defense strategy is minimal, they might not need one. But in a case like this, having an investigator at the table is normal. It doesn't mean the defense has a strong case. It just means they need someone who can keep track of the details while the lawyers focus on the courtroom.
I believe I was called around 1:30 p.m. and was at the Halderson home speaking with Chandler by 4:30. First thing, whoever the reporting party is, we want to talk to them and just see what background information they have as far as, you know, the days leading up to when they were last seen or heard from. We'll go back through and make contacts with any of the people that would have been in last contact, such as coworkers, employers, friends, family, and just basically develop a list of, you know, leads of who we can talk to, where they were last seen. We'll talk to banks, figure out have they been spending any money. The list goes on.
You had an opportunity both then and at many, perhaps, occasions in this case to observe the Halderson home and be in the Halderson home and view it and tour it, correct?
Yes, Chandler showed us around the home July 7th.
What are we looking at there?
That is the north side or the back side of the Halderson home. This is the pond located behind their home, taken from their backyard. Same pond behind the home. This is going to be the garage door and then also another entry door into the home. This is going to be the, what I would call main living room of the home. That's going to be the dining room table, and then the kitchen to the left. This is Chandler's bedroom. Same, Chandler's bedroom. This one is going to be the parents' bedroom, Bart and Krista. I guess you can call the office level of the home, fireplace. This is the same room. This is the storage area, the lower portion, the basement. This is a view of the storage area from the north side.
That white thing in the middle, is that a chest freezer?
That is a chest freezer. This is the south side of the basement.
23, more of the same?
Correct.
And lastly, number 25, what are we looking at there?
This is going to be a picture of the inside of the garage.
No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination?
Not at this time, thank you.
Very good.
So up next, Detective Sabrina Sims. And she was one of the two lead investigators on this case. So while Shunk handled coordination from the office, Sims was the one out in the field, organizing searches, responding to new leads, and physically going to the locations where this case unfolded. So one of the searches Sims oversaw involved a section of the Wisconsin River, where cadaver dogs had alerted along the bank.
Deciding that we would try and put our divers into the water after a cadaver canine had alerted along the banks of one of the search areas.
So that alert triggered a full response, but the current in that area was just too dangerous to enter. So the divers attempted to go in, but the water was moving too fast.
And one of our divers did get in the water, and immediately upon getting in the water, it was realized that it was very dangerous.
Anything placed there would have been swept away almost immediately. Even without a dive, though, the search helped investigators understand what was and was not possible in that part of the river. So Sims also coordinated the search of the pond beside the Halderson home. I mean, the team even attempted a partial drain to improve visibility. But because of the size and plant growth, only part of it could be lowered.
They just were struggling with the environment and the weeds below the water. So we brought in a weed cutter. Also a cadaver canine ran around the different piles of weeds.
And at the end of the day, was anything of evidentiary value located in the pond?
No, it was not.
She also managed the landfill search.
Detective Meyerhofer had worked with the landfill management and determined that this was the cell area where we believed that the trash from the Halderson residence ended up.
Did those end up being of any evidentiary value?
No, they did not.
And followed up on a property where someone reported a strange smell.
Did you receive any tips from citizens throughout this investigation?
We did.
Did one of those tips result in a search of the Lord of Love Church
Yes,
in
it did.
Windsor, Wisconsin?
Yes, it did. We did search it with a large search team, a cadaver canine, and ultimately located nothing.
So a lead came in from two people you'll meet properly later. Dulce, Kat's mum, and Cress, Dulce's girlfriend. After Chandler made a strange, unsettling visit to their farm. That's where another investigator enters the picture, Detective Bavastocks. So he was the one assigned to check out the lead on the property. And when he got there, he found what would become the first confirmed piece of physical evidence in the entire case, the torso that was later identified as Bart.
I called to the command post to Detective Sims, and I talked to her, and I'm like, I need some more people. We need to get out here. We need to search this place right away.
Did you yourself at some point see some birds over the woods?
Yes.
And what were those birds?
Turkey vultures.
And were those turkey vultures over the wooded area at the farm?
When I got there, yeah. The pile of sticks on the other side of the log, and there was just something that wasn't natural under the sticks. I stepped over the log and got a little bit of a closer look.
And what did you find?
I didn't know what it was at first.
What do you mean by that?
It took me a while to process what I was seeing, you know. Then it became obvious that I was looking at a human torso.
So the next major discovery came from Detective Shunk and Deputy James Plenty. So they were the team handling the part of the investigation that ultimately led to finding Krista's remains.
And just briefly, this is 532 that we looked at yesterday, the map that Kat was able to provide to law enforcement?
Yes.
So by this point, the case had exploded. The leads were coming in non-stop. Searches were happening everywhere, and it felt like half the department had been pulled into the investigation.
At some point, some body parts are found. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
One appeared to be a right leg from the foot all the way up to near where the hip socket would be on that leg. The other two, one was a left foot that was severed just above the ankle, and the other item, I wasn't able to identify what it was, but later was identified as being the upper thigh.
So the last member of law enforcement, before we move on to the scientific side of the case, is Detective Timothy Blank. So the digital forensics specialist. So Blank was on the stand for a while, but I'm not going to play it. It was slow, repetitive, and extremely technical. So here's the summary. I mean, he confirmed that Chandler had basically built himself a one-man service department. He'd send an email, then reply to himself, pretending to be unhappy with the service. Then he would escalate the complaint back to himself. Then He would CC Bartin, just keeping you updated. I mean, he was the person providing the service, the person complaining about the service, and the person investigating why the service was so bad. Blank also confirmed the obvious, that we arrived safely text, supposedly from Krista, wasn't sent from the cabin. It came from the same location as Chandler's own phone. So now that we've heard from the detectives, the next witness the prosecution calls is Dr. Corey Breslauer, the deputy medical examiner for Dane County. A medical examiner is the person who determines what caused the death and how it happened. They don't guess, they don't speculate. They deal only in what can be proven. And in this case, she's the one who confirms the big one. The manner of death was homicide.
I assessed that the manner of death was homicide.
But the part that really stands out in her testimony is the gunshot evidence. I mean, she could say with confidence that there were at least 2 shots in the back.
For lack of a better term, Mr. Halderson was shot in the back.
That is correct.
And there might have been a third.
So there are at least 2 gunshot wounds, 1 and 2 that we discussed, and a possible third here.
Correct. We discussed 2 gunshot wounds, and then this is a third.
But because of the dismemberment, she couldn't confirm it. They only had part of what looked like a third bullet track. So the rest of the evidence, the part that would have shown the full path, simply was not there.
Impossible to tell if that represents the entirety of the wound track or if there is tissue missing because of the proximity to the severed head.
And then there was the soot analysis. So to the naked eye, she couldn't see any soot around the wounds. But that doesn't end the question, because soot can be invisible unless you put the tissue under a microscope. And when she did that, she found microscopic soot particles associated with one of the gunshot wounds. Not both, just one.
And were you able to determine what range or what distance the gun was from the skin based upon the microscopic findings?
There were granular particles within the dermis on microscopy of the tissue I submitted here that were consistent with soot. Therefore, I assessed that as a contact range gunshot entrance wound.
And that tells you something incredibly important. At least one of the shots was fired from extremely close range, point blank or within inches. So what she couldn't determine was whether that close range shot was the first shot or the last. The sequence is lost, but the fact itself is solid. So one of the shots was fired right up against him. It's one of those moments where the clinical explanation is somehow creepier than anything dramatic. So next up is Denise Jones, a senior forensic scientist. So basically the DNA and blood lady. So she's the one who tests the stains, swabs and tools the police collected and tells the court exactly what's on them. So this is also where the tools finally get confirmed. The scissors, the saw blades, the axe. I mean, everything recovered and tested. So Denise ran the DNA, processed the samples and identified whose biological material was on what.
I identified blood on the blade of the scissors. Bart Halderson was the source.
Were you able to detect blood on that saw blade?
Yes, Bart Halderson was the source of that profile.
And Krista Halderson?
The same result.
All-way brand handsaw. And were you able to detect blood on that item?
Yes.
And do you know where?
On the blade. And Bart Halderson was the source of that profile.
Next, you were able to identify blood on the axe, item AC.
Krista Halderson, it was at least 1 quadrillion times more likely to observe this DNA profile.
Item G3, what were your conclusions as to that item?
It was a single source male profile, and Bart Halderson was the source of that profile. For us to consider someone the source, the profile has to be rarer than 1 in 7 trillion individuals, which is 1,000 times the world's population.
The number quadrillion is a large number.
Yes.
How large of a number is that?
It's a 1 with 15 zeros after it.
So next up was something that honestly felt like it belonged in a horror film. I'm not going to play the footage, it took too long to get through, but I will show you the still images because they tell the story far better than any testimony ever could. So the summary for this one is as follows. This witness was the forensic crime scene analyst who examined the 2 key areas investigators focused on, the basement and the fireplace on the 1st floor. So these were the locations where they believed the movement between the 2 spaces had happened, back and forth, repeatedly. To understand what had taken place in those 2 areas, he used luminol. So luminol is a chemical that glows when it reacts with certain substances. It's well known for reacting to blood, but it can also react to things like bleach or metals. So a luminol glow doesn't automatically prove anything. It's just a signal. Once they see a reaction, they have to take a swab and run proper tests to confirm whether it's actually blood. So what made his testimony so eerie wasn't the chemical. It was the patterns he could read from the reactions. Even without showing anything graphic, he could explain what the shapes meant. So areas where liquid had pooled, areas where someone had stepped through it, areas where it had dripped, and areas where it had travelled through the air. So the shapes alone told investigators that something serious had happened in that room. So the last expert in that group is Cristina Figueroa, the forensic anthropologist, basically the remains expert. So she spent hours on the stand, walking the jury through the part of the case everyone had been waiting for. So by this point, we already knew Bart's torso had been recovered, and parts of Krista had been found at a separate location. But most of both victims were still missing. And the question hanging over the courtroom was simple. Where's the rest? So because Chandler kept a fire burning for hours after the murders, investigators examined the fireplace in detail. And that's where they found numerous bone fragments, including a sizable piece of human skull, teeth, and several long bone fragments consistent with parts of arms or legs. In total, there were hundreds of pieces, and Christina confirmed they were mostly human.
In this particular case, they were calling our office in order to determine if the remains, if what they have at the house was actually human remains or not. So we were able to find an array of different types of teeth.
You were not able to identify whose teeth these were because of the condition they were in and how they were removed, essentially.
That is correct. Okay. So this is just a summary of what I found for what I can categorize as hands. So this is what I classified as long bones, because I was not 100% sure if it was left or right.
Showing what's already been admitted is 239. There's a spot on the top of the fireplace, kind of there in the center, that was of interest to people.
Yeah, that white spot, yes.
Okay. Could you tell us what we're looking at there?
It is bone. This is potentially consistent with cranial bone or bone from the skull.
So now that we have dealt with all the factual stuff, it was time to switch gears and meet the people who actually lived through it. So first up, and rightly so, is Mitchell, Chandler's brother. And honestly, I really feel for this guy. I mean, you can't fully tell from the camera angle whether he was directly looking at Chandler, but it certainly felt like it. I mean, there was this expression on his face that said everything without saying a word. Not anger, not theatrics, just a kind of exhausted disbelief.
Did your parents tell you in the last week of June or the very beginning of July any idea that they may be going to the cabin?
No.
And what did you learn from Chandler?
That they had gone up north with friends, that he didn't know who those friends were, and didn't know the car that they had taken.
Okay.
I had reached out to each one of those families and had heard back that none of them were the ones that had gone up north.
Why did you go to the cabin?
Wanted to do something myself about it. I felt like I needed to do something.
Okay. And what led you to being so concerned?
Not having heard from them, not being able to get a hold of them, and not being told that they had gone up there to begin with.
And Mitchell, did you have anything to do with your parents being missing?
I did not.
Going missing?
No.
And now we meet the man who, with nothing but good intentions, decided it was a smart idea to hand Chandler a Russian high-powered assault rifle. Probably not one of his better ideas, but to be fair to him, he had no reason to suspect anything. I mean, he wasn't dealing with the Chandler we've come to know, but his role does mark a quiet turning point in this story. So let's bring him in.
And how did you meet someone who lived here in Wisconsin while you were in Germany?
Playing video games on Arma 3 server, sir.
All right. Is there any specific weapons that Mr. Halderson liked when he was playing these games?
The SKS was certainly a weapon that was fun to use in Tarkov and was something that I had grown interest in as well.
Okay. At some point, you decided to come visit Chandler.
Yes, sir.
When you visited Wisconsin to see Chandler, you brought him a gift.
Yes, sir.
What did you bring him?
I brought him a 20-inch barrel SKS. So I purchased it initially because I really thought, like, oh, well, I like it in the video game. I might like it in real life. And then I fired it. It sat in my safe, and then I never touched it again. And then it just dawned on me, like, well, I'm going to give it to someone who might actually appreciate this weapon and take care of it and all that. So I ended up giving it to Chandler as a gift.
Okay.
So next up were the Hilgendorfs, Mike, Jane, and their twins, Hannah and Haley. So first on the stand was Mike Hilgendorf. Mike was very similar to Bart. Grounded, serious, and practical. And their role in this story is simple, but important. When Jane became frantic about the whole cabin trip, both herself and Mike took it upon themselves to drive out there and check it out. So they went all the way to the cabin. Nobody there. So they reported that back to Chandler, and his reaction was quite worrying.
At that point in time, he said you didn't see anything, no shotgun shells, no blood, nothing. And I said, nobody, absolutely nobody has been here.
He asked if you saw shotgun shells or blood.
Shotgun shells, blood, anything. And I, at that point in time, the conversation ended up fairly quickly. And that's when me and Jane were back in the car, obviously, and we turned around to head back to our cabin. And I responded to Jane. I said, this is really giving me a sick stomach.
So naturally, after Mike, Jane Hilgendorf took the stand. And the moment she started speaking, you could see exactly how these families fit together. So Bart and Mike were the calm, steady, practical ones. And Jane brought the opposite energy, emotional, expressive, and deeply connected to the people she cared about. So Jane was just lovely. I mean, you could tell instantly how much she adored Krista.
Did you know someone named Bart and Krista Halderson?
I did.
Do you remain friends with Krista your whole life?
Yep, 39 years. She's been my best friend.
You were around these folks a lot with their kids. What kind of parents were Bart and Krista?
Amazing. They weren't yellers. They didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, I don't think they had probably ever even spanked their kids. I mean, half the time her and I would say, I'm going to the cottage this weekend, whatever. I never got a phone call like that.
I mean, if she didn't answer my calls right away, she would always call me back.
Sure.
He said he had gotten a text from her, so I was like, that made me feel a little better. Like, okay, no big deal. He called me on Wednesday and said, Mom and Dad haven't come home. And I was like, what? And I said, call the police, have them go over, do a well check. Did you call? And he's like, no, I can't find the number for up there.
So next up are Hannah and Haley, the Hilgendorf twins.
My name is Haley Hilgendorf.
My name is Hannah Hilgendorf.
That was my only red flag looking back when he said they asked me for text messages. The detectives did, and you never have to give them your phone. You can just send screenshots because they got everything they need.
Chandler's parents are missing. Police are there investigating. The police leave. And he gives you advice that you don't have to turn your phone over to police. Instead, he says, don't turn over your phone, take screenshots.
Yeah.
And that was his concern at that moment on July 7th.
Me and my sister went up and we're sitting at the main dining table in the upstairs, and he said, like, I don't know what to do now. Like, should I make a Facebook post, like right after the police had left? And I was thinking to myself, I wanted to say, duh, you know, like, your parents are missing. It's almost feeling like you have to think about how to act, you know? Like, if your parents are missing, you go online, you tell everybody, you go to the police the day of, especially a no call, no show to work. They would have never done that. So, and to ask me, you know, what you should do now, and should you make a Facebook post, like, how should you go about this? It was just interesting.
So before we get to the next witness, here's a quick fun fact about the state seal you see behind the judge. So that symbol actually comes from a tradition that started in England centuries ago. So back then, kings and nobles wore signet rings engraved with their personal seal. When they sent an official letter, they'd press the ring into hot wax on the envelope. That imprint was the proof of authenticity. If the seal was intact, the message was genuinely from the king. If it was broken, someone had tampered with it. The seal was the authority. When America was founded, they didn't keep the monarchy, but they kept the idea. So instead of a king's personal seal, the new government created state seals and the Great Seal of the United States. So these weren't tied to a person. They represented the authority of the government itself. So governors, courts, and officials used them to authenticate documents, treaties, and legal decisions. It was the same concept, just adapted to a system where power came from the state, not the monarch. So when you see the Wisconsin seal behind the judge, it's basically the modern version of that old wax seal tradition. It's the courtroom's way of saying this isn't one person's opinion. It's the authority of the state. So the next witnesses were Kat's mum, Dulce, and her partner, Cress. So they were the ones who saw Chandler on July 4th and then again the day after, when he returned alone under the excuse of using the pool. So Dulce went up first, and she was genuinely lovely. I mean, you could tell immediately that she adores Kat. And you could also tell this entire situation was incredibly upsetting for her. I mean, English isn't her first language. So the prosecutor, William, slowed things down a bit, rephrased questions, and made sure she understood what he was asking. I mean, it wasn't leading, it was just basic clarity. But because he had to simplify the language, it sounded a bit like leading to anyone who wanted to make noise about it. And that's when the defense suddenly woke up. They had barely said a word all trial. But the moment this poor woman was trying to get through her testimony, they started objecting, leading, hearsay, anything they could reach for.
Would you describe the way he was acting, his behavior?
Objection, leading.
We'll hear the full question.
Would you describe his behavior or the way he was acting? Was that normal for Chandler? Was it different than usual?
So the leading objections were pointless. William was just making sure she understood the question. And the hearsay objections were over tiny moments where Dulce repeated something Cress had said in passing.
I'm going to object at this point.
I'm sorry, object to?
Possible hearsay that may come out.
What? I'm sorry.
I mean, none of it changed the substance of the testimony, but it did make Dulce think she was doing something wrong.
Was that important to you?
Objection.
Yes.
Overruled. The answer can stand.
What did that mean?
I mean, she hadn't. She was doing everything right. So the defense hadn't thought anything meaningful up to this point.
Judge. Sorry again, but can we approach?
And now they were nitpicking the one witness who clearly found this whole process overwhelming.
He basically excused himself to go swimming.
Okay. And did he go by himself or did you go with him at that point?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but can we approach real quick?
We went and we didn't see Chandler swimming. We didn't see anything. We saw the car and I thought he was sleeping.
So you saw the car, you said the back was open, and you saw maybe a ramp type thing. Did you know where Chandler was?
No.
But what did you and Cress do at that time? Not what was said, but what did you do?
We went to the pool. He asked if he can get in the pool with us.
Did you or Cress ask Chandler where he had been?
Objection to the form of the question.
I mean, it didn't help them. It didn't change the facts. It just made the moment harder for Dulce than it needed to be.
Chandler left at that point?
Yes. So
Objection.
What?
May we approach?
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. We're going to talk again. You see him a couple days later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
The next day?
Yeah.
Well, it was Tuesday, so we had beat-ups.
So after Dulce stepped down, it was time for Cress to take the stand. And this is where the jury finally got a clear picture of Chandler's behavior over those 2 days. July 4th and the day after, when he came back alone. She walked the jury through the first visit, which now looks like reconnaissance, and the second visit, where he came back alone to hide what he had done.
Do you see Chandler Halderson over the July 4th weekend?
Yes. Kind of walking towards the kitchen, and he approached me and asked me if he could have my phone number, my personal phone number, because he wanted to know if he could come and use the pool.
Let's fast forward to the next day, Monday, July 5th.
I saw a car in my driveway. I said, "Are you here to use the pool?" And he said, "Yeah, would that be all right?" He drove up. When we got up there, he wasn't in the pool, and the cover was still on the pool, and I could see through the shed that his car was parked on the other side of the shed.
Do you know, was the hatch open, closed, something else?
The back hatch, the back was open.
Okay.
We were like, what's he doing? You know, what is going on?
Sure.
So we drove over to see if he was in the back of the car. Was he sleeping? What was he doing? Was he smoking weed or something? We didn't know.
And his car was here, but he walked past his car, you said?
Yes.
And then walked over by the pool?
Right.
Okay.
And it was odd because he just seemed really different when he got in the pool from when he was talking to us before. He got up first. Said he was in a hurry. He had to go.
And then after he got out of the pool, he got into his vehicle and drove away.
Yeah.
So now we move on to the person who was closest to Chandler during this period, Kat. And I really do feel for her. But before we talk about her testimony today, we need to go back to the jail calls. So up until the 27th of November, at least from the calls we have, Kat was still speaking to Chandler like none of this had happened, talking about normal day-to-day things, barely acknowledging the fact they were separated by a jail wall. I mean, we don't know what happens after those calls. We don't have any recordings beyond that point. But what we do know is that by January, when she takes the stand, the relationship is over. She never spoke to him again. And I don't think judgment is the right reaction towards Kat. I mean, she was young. She loved him. She believed him. I mean, if this were my daughter, I'd be trying to understand how she might be feeling, whether I liked it or not, and how to support her through something this overwhelming. I mean, that's the thing with kids. You don't always like their choices, but you don't get to push them away because of it. You stand beside them. You give them stability when everything else is chaos. They don't need your opinions in moments like this. They just need to know you're there, ready to help pick up the pieces when the time comes. And if you go too hard against them, especially in a situation this emotional, they'll just shut you out anyway. And then you lose the chance to guide them at all. I mean, that's how I've chosen to look at Kat. Yes, it frustrated me at first, but stepping back, it felt wrong to be annoyed with a girl who hasn't got a bad bone in her body. I mean, she never asked for any of this. Her only crime was loving someone who lied to her. I mean, you can't be angry at somebody for that. So back to her role in this trial. I mean, Kat isn't just here to talk about what it's like being in a relationship with Chandler. She's here because she saw him every single day in the immediate aftermath of the murders. Chandler kept her close, and because of that, she can tell us exactly what he was doing in the days between the murders and his arrest a week later.
How do you know Chandler?
We were in a relationship. I did like Miss Halderson a lot.
Did you like Mr. Halderson?
Yes, I did.
Did you believe Chandler was going to MATC?
Yes.
Did you believe he worked at this dive team job back at that time?
Yes.
Did Chandler get a job with American Family Insurance?
Yes.
Did it appear that Chandler had gotten a new job or was in the process of getting a new job?
Yes. SpaceX.
Okay. Were you under the impression that Chandler had actually started working at SpaceX?
Yes.
Were you aware at any point if Chandler had rented an apartment?
Yes.
On July 1st of 2021, was this activity, the carrying of ice, was that inconsistent with what you knew his physical limitations to be?
Correct.
So if those photographs were taken the night of July 1st, that would be surprising to you?
Yes.
Did you have an occasion ever to go in the chest freezer?
Yes.
And was it full when you saw it in June?
Yes.
Was it sitting like that, open, when you saw it last?
No.
Okay. Right. Do you know of any reason that Chandler, for his own purposes, would have needed 20 or more pounds of ice around July 1st this year?
Not that I can think of, no.
So now we're into July 2nd, which is a Friday. Did you have to go to Target to pick some stuff up?
Yes.
Extra bottle, and was it your belief that he's referring to hydrogen peroxide?
Correct.
And is that the Swiffer?
Yes.
Is that the one you took to Chandler's?
Yes.
All right, I'll move 528 to evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
It is received.
While you were with Chandler that night, did he say anything about where his parents were?
Up north at their cabin.
That day when you left, were you aware of what Chandler's plans were?
To do chores.
Is that Chandler walking into Fleet Farm?
Yes.
And if that was a screenshot of a video taken that morning just after you left, you don't know anything about why he'd be there, right?
No.
Okay. What is that?
A screenshot of Chandler by the Wisconsin River.
4th of July, what's the general plan that day for you?
Have Chandler come over so we could all go to the farm, eat with my family. We did a little walk up to the pool, and then we later swam in the pool.
Did Chandler mention anything to you about a reason to go up near the Wisconsin River at night near Portage?
No.
Okay. Did you go with him that Monday to the farm?
No, I did not.
No further questions.
So now that the state had called their last witness, it was over to the defense to see whether they would be presenting a case of their own. And no surprise there, no case, nothing. And the big one, Chandler would not be taking the stand. But I think we all knew that. I mean, if he'd gone anywhere near that witness box, he would have been absolutely destroyed on cross-examination. I mean, his usual tricks weren't going to work in this courtroom. For the first time in his life, Chandler had met his match. He wasn't dealing with a girlfriend blinded by love anymore. He was facing the state of Wisconsin, and they weren't interested in his stories. And here's the part that made it almost surreal. Even with absolutely nothing to offer, they were still adamant that Chandler didn't commit these crimes. And yes, legally, the defense doesn't carry the burden of proof. They don't have to call witnesses. They don't have to present evidence. They don't have to explain anything. That's the rule. But anyone with a sensible mind knows this. When the evidence is this strong, sure, the rules say you don't have to put on a defense. But common sense says you need something. And with that, both sides officially rested. So now that both sides had rested, we move on to one of my favourite parts of any trial, the closing arguments. So to me, the opening and closing arguments are the two most entertaining moments in a courtroom. The opening statement tells the jury what the story will be. The closing argument tells them why the story is true. So earlier in the trial, William delivered a brilliant opening. And now it was Andrea's turn to close. So she stood up with that same soft, steady style they'd both carried throughout the trial. But this time she came armed with a meticulously prepared PowerPoint. Every day, every timeline, every piece of evidence laid out in order. So if William told the story, Andrea showed the receipts. She walked the jury through the case step by step.
We know at 7:27 a.m., his mom leaves for work. He texts his girlfriend at 1:04 p.m. I overheard that they may go to the cabin with their friends, and I don't know. We also know that on Bart's work calendar, he has a meeting with Chandler and MATC. That at 2:10 p.m., Bart texts Chandler, "I'm ready whenever you are." What happened next? Well, we have to look at the evidence. There's a spent shell casing in the basement of the home. There's a bullet fragment. That's the bullet that went through and through Bart. A divot from ricochet. Also blood, more blood. Dad's phone died. Text or call me. Dad's dead. Dad died. He buys 20 pounds of ice. The neighbor, Steve Greiber, smells a weird burning, like a pig roast. Right there by the fireplace is a measuring tape. Folks, he measured the parts of the body, the to see if they were small enough to fit into the fireplace. He did cut his foot. We're not disputing that. But he cut his foot in the process of dismembering and blowing and burning his parents, not from playing ball with the dogs. And of course, on top of this fireplace that then is made to look all pristine, there's a piece of skull. 18 from the hands, 24 teeth, 8 vertebrae, 3 long bones, either from arms or legs. Quadrillion times more likely to be those two than an unknown person. A 23-year-old at 7:02 a.m. gets up, drives to Fleet Farm. He buys a tarp, later found in a trash bin at the Earlwyn Road property out in the woods. He has body parts in the basement of his home, in the freezer. That freezer tested positive for human blood. Krista's phone is responding to towers in her house. He needs to be able to control her that night. He needs to be able to know if she wakes up and where she goes if she does. So he builds this, a thing that has walls where you really can't get in and out of it gracefully. Saturday, July 3rd, 2021. In that white tent in the background, that's where they found Mom's legs. And he asked permission to return the next day and use the pool. So Brent Baverstock comes. He probably thinks he's gonna find a whole body, but cause of death, gunshot wounds, manner of death, homicide. Can't shoot yourself in the back. That's the tool that Chandler used to cut off his dad's head. That's the tape he wrapped around the tarp to seal up his dad's torso. But that tarp, once again, is covered in blood. Chandler took a bag full of bloody rags, disposed of it at the farm, and a bag with Kat's name on it. Your parents are allegedly missing. You just reported them to the police as missing, and you're encouraging people not to be fully cooperative with police? Also that day, on July 8th, he does some Google searches. The timing of these searches is incredibly important, folks. Those searches happened at 9:44 and 9:45 a.m. Torso is not found until 3 p.m. Krista's legs are not found until a week later. And what is he Googling? Body found, Wisconsin. Women's body found, Wisconsin. Wisconsin dismembered body found. And at that point, Chandler's arrested. So that's the evidence, folks. That's the pieces of the puzzle in this case.
So after Andrea finished her closing, an hour of pure clarity, it was finally time for the defense to have their turn. Attorney Vera stood up, and for the first time in this entire trial, she actually looked like she was putting in some effort. But before we get into her closing, we need to talk about the other defense attorney, Catherine Dorrell, because her contribution throughout the trial has been minimal at best. Her opening statement was pointless. Her questions were minimal. Her objections were rare and ineffective, and she spent most of the trial typing away on her laptop like she was working on another case, half listening to what was going on, while Chandler, the resident waxwork, sat there right next to her. So anyway, back to Vera. So with Catherine doing the bare minimum, it fell on attorney Vera to try and salvage something from this disaster. And her style throughout this trial had been noticeably confrontational, sharp, defensive, almost bristling at the prosecution every time she stood up. I mean, that energy carried straight into her close. I mean, she opened by insisting that Chandler's lying wasn't relevant to the case. Then she moved to the missing persons form he'd signed and tried to twist reasonable doubt into something impossible, basically implying the jury needed a video of the murders to convict. I mean, it was the same tired argument the defense had been clinging to since day one. And the way she glossed over the word reasonable was interesting, because that's the key word. It's not beyond any doubt. It's not beyond all doubt. It's beyond reasonable doubt. But she slid right past it, framing the standard as something unreachable. I mean, that was the tone of her entire close. A confrontational delivery built on selective honesty misdirection and a standard she knew the jury didn't need to meet.
When we were going over jury selection, I asked you, how would you feel if you didn't testify? And a couple people said I wouldn't need to hear from him. A couple people said that they would treat him the same way they would do every witness. Bullshit! He lies, and they did a great job of making it known that he lies. If he testified, you were not going to believe anything he said. And that's fine, because it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, there's only one lie that really does matter, and that's the one that he said about his parents missing. A piece of paper that is signed, a formal piece of paper that's signed by Chandler to the Dane County Sheriff's Office about a missing persons that clearly is not true, this is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I can't tell you how she was killed. We don't know. Whatever. And it was always in the parts that had to do with the homicides. If you're charging people with crimes, you should know. You did not need to have the email conversations. You did not need to have the text conversations. You didn't need any of that, but they provided it to you, even though it's not an element or a charge that they have to prove. Use your common sense. And again, it's not an element that they needed to prove. It's not a charge that they needed to prove. They just wanted you to know that he's a liar. And what does it matter? Here's what you need to ask yourself. What does it matter? Because according to them, that's motive. Kids lie to their parents all the time. So again, another leap that you're supposed to make is that while he's allegedly murdering his parents, he decides, I'm going to start this fire. I'm going to put some things in that fire, but wait, I have to go to Quick Trip. Use your common sense. That makes sense to absolutely no one. They want to make a big deal about this gun. You don't know that this is the gun that was used on Bart. You don't know that. So whenever you don't know about something, you have to ask yourself, have they met their burden? Is this proof beyond a reasonable doubt? Something awful happened to these two people. And the very least you can say is that Chandler reacted. But you do not know what happened. The question I have for you is, did the state meet their burden when it comes to first-degree intentional homicide? What have you been given that proves intent? There's no evidence at all that Chandler is a violent person. Intent is something that means something, and there's just no evidence that's providing you with that level of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you need for this first-degree intentional homicide. Do you know how Bart was killed? Do you know how Krista was killed? Do you know if it was an awful accident? Do you know if it was intentional? Do you know if there was someone else involved? You don't. And that's a problem. What if I told you that at any minute, someone's gonna walk into that door, someone from the Dane County Deputies Department is gonna walk in and say, I found it, I found the video we were looking for. I know exactly what happened in that house on the 1st. It doesn't exist. But what if it did? Are you gonna be paying attention to what Mr. Brown has to say during his rebuttal? Or are you gonna be looking at that door hoping that someone walks in? And if you're gonna look at that door hoping that someone comes in, you have reasons to doubt. Ask yourself the questions that you need to ask. I guarantee you that the 12 of you that are going to go back and deliberate are all gonna have 12 different theories on what happened, and that's a problem. I'm asking you to find him not guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
And now for the final act. William stepped back up for the rebuttal, the knockout blow, to dismantle everything Vera had just tried to build. And we see a completely different side of him here. Before, he was composed, measured, focused on the narrative. But after listening to Vera's closing, after hearing her try to talk up a man who had lied to everyone, manipulated everyone, and treated his own parents like collateral, something in him clearly snapped. Because even that short burst of defense energy felt insulting. And William wasn't having it. I mean, his rebuttal comes out with fire, thorough, smart, factual, and sharp in a way we hadn't seen from him before. He has this gift. He's not just a good storyteller. He's not just a good prosecutor. I mean, this man knows exactly what he is doing. He is, without question, the best prosecutor I have ever seen at work. And here he is, stepping up for the final time, delivering a rebuttal that feels less like a speech and more like a masterclass. And honestly, the next time we see him, I wouldn't be surprised if he's wearing a judge's robe.
Miss Vera just stood up here and said, what if this was an awful accident? Bart Halderson was shot in the back twice. You do not fall down and shoot yourself in the back twice. Bart Halderson and Krista Halderson had their heads chopped off, had their arms and legs removed. On his hands and knees, some of them from the front to back, meaning probably could see the face of his mom and his dad as that saw moved back and forth, back and forth. And you just saw the bones, but what's before the bones? The skin, the blood, the muscle, the fat, the smell that they had to produce. Lay them on the ground in front of their family fireplace, take scissors and pruning shears, take a hacksaw, take a keyhole saw, and saw off their heads, arms, legs, burn them in the fireplace. But on some level, whoever Chandler Halderson was died years ago as well. And what was left was this shell of a person who made this nonsense up, who built himself up to be a tech employee, rescue scuba diving guy, who's going to college. It was all he had. If you weren't going to school, they sure weren't going to hire you at American Family Insurance. That couldn't have been real. There's no way you got a job at SpaceX. What else are you lying about? Where are you going all the time when you say you're training for this scuba diving team? Everything about him falls apart. He had two options. Own up to his lies, stand up and finally tell the truth for once, or like a coward, shoot your father in the back. Miss Vera says, wow, we just got a showcase. Yeah, we got a bullet fragment. Just happens to have Bart Halderson's DNA on it. And you looked at it, just happens to appear to have blood all over it. We don't know what happened. Chandler Halderson did this in the basement of his house. The blood is everywhere. The bullet's there. Blood all over that fireplace stoop, bone fragments in the ash trap. You know exactly what happened. You don't need a video. The lies are important because it's all Chandler Halderson had. And when they were exposed, he started coming up with this plan. He says they're going to the cabin this weekend. He made his final decision. Because at that moment, Chandler Halderson knew there was no way out. It was done. Everyone was going to see him for what he was. Some guy without a job who'd been lying to everyone for years. And he couldn't handle that. The ultimate act of betrayal. He shot his parents. And then he cut them up and he hid them. But the lies didn't even stop there. Now he's on the news. Now he's giving interviews. His lawyers stood up here and told you to lie for him. Not to do what you swore to do, which is to render a just and true verdict based on the evidence. That reasonable hypothesis that was just offered to you was that it was an accident. And then Chandler made what his attorney believes to be the reasonable decision to chop apart those bodies and hide them around the state. What you're being asked to do is to lie one last time. It is the experience that everyone in Chandler Halderson's life has had to deal with, and now it's yours. Everyone who has interacted with this man for years has had no other experience other than being lied to. And now it's you that's going to be lied to by his attorneys. What happened here wasn't an accident. Mr. Halderson's statement to the police that my mom has nosebleeds and my dad, he just scratches his psoriasis. Doesn't explain his blood on a bullet fragment. Doesn't explain the Halderson's teeth in the ash trap. What I'm asking you to do is to look for the truth. These people were killed. This is a first-degree intentional homicide. You cannot shoot someone in the back. You cannot chop them up. You cannot scatter their remains and come to any other conclusion. And we're asking you to find him guilty. Thank you.
So now both sides have presented their cases, or not, depending on how generous you're feeling. It was finally time for the jury to deliberate. And let me tell you, they clearly wanted to get home. They were out for just 2 hours. I mean, that is lightning fast. And it honestly sounds like there wasn't much discussion at all. Just a lot of form filling and maybe a quick chat about what they were having for dinner that night. Because really, what was there to debate? So the jury deliberated, the verdict was reached, and it came as no surprise to anybody. Guilty on all counts. Every single one.
The verdict form on count 1, as signed by the presiding juror and dated today, reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant Chandler M. Halderson guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Bart A. Halderson, guilty of providing false information about a missing person, guilty of mutilating a corpse, guilty of hiding a corpse, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as to Krista R. Halderson, guilty of providing false information about a missing person, guilty of mutilating a corpse, guilty of hiding a corpse as to Krista R. Halderson, as charged in count 8 of the amended information."
The jury were thanked for their service and dismissed. And just like that, the trial phase was over. So before we even get into the sentencing hearing itself, there's something you need to know. Even right up to the last minute before sentencing, Chandler was still trying to dodge accountability. His attorneys filed a motion asking the court to excuse him from attending his own sentencing hearing. And William, the prosecutor, immediately wrote a letter to the judge pointing out Wisconsin law. Defendants must be physically present for sentencing. And if that wasn't enough, Chandler also refused to participate in the pre-sentence investigation, like a kid throwing his toys everywhere. So the pre-sentence investigation, or PSI, is basically an interview and background report used to help the judge understand a defendant's history, mindset, and any claimed rehabilitative needs before sentencing. It's the one moment where a defendant can try to spin a narrative, claim remorse, or argue that they have issues that could be treated. But Chandler didn't take it. I mean, the boy who lied about everything suddenly had nothing to say. He missed his final opportunity to manipulate the system. And the cherry on top, he thought he was clever, but he couldn't even recognize the one moment where another lie might have actually done him some good for once. So now we're here, March 17th, 2022. And once again, everything moved fast. I mean, think about it. He committed the murders in July 2021. And by March the next year, just 2 days after his birthday, he was already being handed a life sentence. I mean, poetic, really. The world finally kicked back. And his birthday present was a prison cell. So at this point, everyone knew what was coming. Life was mandatory. I mean, that wasn't the question. The real purpose of this hearing was to decide 2 things. Would the sentences run consecutively or concurrently? And would he have any possibility of parole? And as is standard in cases like this, the sentencing hearing began with the victim impact statements. But today, the prosecutors will be the ones reading them. The family asked for that. They were emotionally shattered.
Bart and Krista were amazing people. They were there to help everyone and anyone with whatever they could. Krista had always been so welcoming to me. From the first time I met her in 2014 for Christmas to the morning that we both called her and Bart to tell them the good news that Mitchell and I were engaged in 2020, to the afternoon we spent at their home for Father's Day in June of 2021, just a week before they were killed. Krista was excited to talk with me and always made me feel at home. Bart had a wonderful sense of humor and was a great handyman. They loved going to wineries, breweries, concerts on the square, the farmers market, and had been dreaming about many different trips to explore Wisconsin and the United States. But again, due to their senseless murders, they will never get to experience these things. Given the fact that he was capable of such calculated and horrific act of murder, I do not believe my family would be safe if he were ever to be released from prison. For this reason, I believe he should not be given the chance for parole. She shared that Krista was a staple in her life, a sister in every way except for biological. She was the aunt to her daughters. She described Krista Halderson as having a lightness about her, that when she'd walk into the room, you would just feel happier. She was bubbly. She was a helper, wanted to always fix people's problems. Krista was described by her boss at work as the work mom for everything. She was the person you went to if you needed Tylenol, a hug, or a pep talk. She listened to people and cared about people. She went out of her way to lift people up. She was the type of person that you would feel happier, that would make you feel happier after you talked to her. The title that was most important to Krista was that of mom. That was her identity. Being a mom was her purpose in life. She was the type of mom that had bins where she saved her kids' Legos for the grandchildren. She had meticulous bins in her basement, each one perfectly labeled with no dust on them, that were organized and labeled their awards, their Eagle Scout journey, and various paraphernalia and photos. Jane said Krista was a joy and a blessing. I not only talked to Jane about Bart Halderson, but also his family over the last several weeks. Bart was quieter. He worked hard and he provided for his family. He was up for quite a big promotion right before his murder. He liked the outdoors, nature, fishing, and his family. He was redoing and in the process of renovating his entire house, nearly down to the studs. He had recently built a brand new dining table made of pure wood, which he had hoped that they would use for the rest of their lives, celebrating the holidays with the grandkids. Bart is described as generous, doing little things to take care of people. Jane pointed out that every time he was in Milwaukee, he would always take her daughters out when they were in college for a free meal with their Uncle Bart. They won't get to experience the retirement that they really had been planning for decades. And they didn't get to say goodbye to anyone. Multiple people, when we talked to them about Bart and Krista, said, you know, if they would have found out about Chandler's lies and his deception, they would have been upset. They would have been. But they also would have worked with him to get him back on the right track. His brother lost his entire nuclear family overnight. The entire family is forever altered. People who were generous to Chandler, such as his girlfriend and her family, have had their lives completely uprooted as well. Your Honor, as you craft a sentence, I'm asking that you please consider all this trauma as part of the seriousness of this offense in creating a just sentence.
So following the victim impact statements, we finally get to what everyone in that courtroom was waiting for. So this is where the district attorney lays out exactly what the state recommends and why. And William, as always, delivered it with the clarity and precision you'd expect.
I'll start with the rehabilitative needs of Mr. Halderson. I have no idea what they are. Mr. Halderson has an absolute right to not participate in these proceedings, and he is not being sentenced today, and I'm not asking you to sentence him based on his non-participation in either the PSI or a trial. Of course, those are his constitutional rights. You probably are wondering, and I'll tell you, it's been thoroughly investigated of whether there were any red flags that anyone missed. He seemed to be a pretty normal kid with a pretty normal life who did a pretty abnormal thing as he turned 23. You don't know what his rehabilitative needs are, and that's a challenge. Mr. Halderson, by all accounts, chose to commit the crime of first-degree intentional homicide twice on a single day because he was caught lying about where he was working and going to school. But when faced with, in the grand scheme of things, a minor inconvenience in his life, Mr. Halderson chose to commit the crime of first-degree intentional homicide 2 times because he got caught in a minor inconvenience. I don't know how you protect the public from someone like that. The crime of first-degree intentional homicide is as serious as it gets. Committing it twice is even more serious. And committing it against the people who you're supposed to love the most is beyond comprehension for many in our community. I've never heard of a crime more serious. No one who's interacted with Mr. Halderson will ever be the same. Our question is whether Mr. Halderson should ever be released from prison, and if so, when should he have that opportunity to ask? It's my position that he should never be released from prison.
So the defense had their turn too. But honestly, who cared? I mean, their entire theme, if you can call it that, was that Chandler should be given a chance at parole one day.
We are asking for the possibility of parole. And I want to stress that it is a possibility. It is not a guarantee. It is not something that is going to happen, even if Your Honor says today that there's a possibility that it could happen. If Your Honor believes that sentencing is purely punitive, purely an issue of punishment, then the only option is life without parole. But if Your Honor believes that it is a delicate combination of punishment and rehabilitation, redemption, if you will, then there's only one option, and that is the option of life with parole.
I mean, it was almost comical. I mean, you've got this woman standing there begging for parole, arguing he has rehabilitative potential, while Chandler himself refused to participate in the PSI. I mean, the one process designed to assess rehabilitative needs. I mean, why bother arguing for something he couldn't even be bothered to help them build? And then, just to seal his fate, Chandler made his dumbest move yet. Right before sentencing, he managed to sabotage himself one last time.
Mr. Halderson would like to give a statement to Your Honor.
You may remove your mask if you wish. I believe the conditions in the jail are and very good as far as the pandemic. So if you want to speak without your mask and Attorney Dorrell's comfortable with that, you could.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I would only ask that you read slowly, simply because my court reporter has to take down what you're saying, and sometimes we read faster than we mean to.
Your Honor, I want to take this opportunity to state my intent to appeal my convictions. If there are any lawyers listening and willing to take on my appeal, take a moment to please reach out to me. It's not that I do not have feelings. It's that I was warned to not show them due to the scrutiny of this case. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, what was this boy thinking? Right before someone is about to decide the rest of your life, you pull a stunt like that. I mean, you refuse the PSI, you refuse to help your own defense, and you irritate the person who's about to hand you the harshest sentence possible. And now, with all that on record, I mean, it was finally time. And this is where the judge's real character comes through. I mean, he's one of those rare figures who manages to be warm and human without ever being soft. When he begins to speak, he pauses. He's so emotional about this catastrophic tragedy he's presiding over.
I'm very passionate about our system.
I mean, it was genuinely moving. And the thing is, I mean, this judge is a seriously wise man. The kind of judge who restores your faith in the system. I mean, if every courtroom had someone like him on the bench, the world would be a far fairer and far safer place. Well, as safe as it can be when people like Chandler exist. And once he's steady, he lays it all out. He tells Chandler exactly what he thinks of his actions, his lies, his choices, and the danger he poses. before finally handing down the fate Chandler earned and deserved.
The gravity of the offense is as serious as it could be. I recognize that the jury found Mr. Halderson guilty of mutilating both bodies, hiding both bodies, and that he took steps in those actions which really robbed those people of dignity. The gravity of these offenses and the need to protect the public outweigh the potential that there could be that at some future point he should have presence among us. I have to, for this sentence, ensure that the only time Mr. Halderson comes back into the community is to have the privilege of a burial that he denied his parents. So to make this quite simple, I will impose maximum terms concurrent to each other and concurrent to counts 1 and 5. I thank everyone for being here today. We are adjourned.
And that was it. I mean, once the judge finished speaking, the outcome was unmistakable. Chandler Halderson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge chose not to run the sentences consecutively because it made no practical difference. Chandler was never going to re-enter the general public. And for anyone wondering, no, the death penalty was never on the table here. Wisconsin abolished it in 1853. The harshest punishment the state can give is life without parole. And Chandler earned every second of it. The judge even said it plainly. The only time Chandler would return to society would be for his own funeral, something he never allowed his parents, stripping them of their dignity even in death. And with that, it was over. So after sentencing, Chandler's case moved into the appeals process. An appellate attorney, Michael Covey, was assigned to review the entire case from scratch. And almost immediately, he spotted something the trial never addressed. Under Wisconsin law, the charge of mutilating a corpse already includes concealing it, meaning those extra hide the body counts shouldn't have been in there in the first place. And once he flagged that issue, he kept going. He went through every witness, every ruling, every scrap of evidence. I mean, every decision made in that courtroom. And after all that, he reached the most brutal conclusion possible. Chandler had nothing. I mean, he filed a no merit report, a formal declaration that says there is nothing worth appealing. It's the legal equivalent of sealing the door shut. This basically means Chandler's entire appeal was just another delusion, another fantasy, another bright idea that collapsed the second somebody competent looked at it. So Chandler attempted a handwritten response, but it didn't matter. The Court of Appeals reviewed everything, agreed with Covey, and upheld the conviction in full. And that was it. Once the appeal was dismissed, he was transported to Dodge Correctional Institution, the first stop before officials determine where he will serve the remainder of his sentence. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.